Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, March 16th, 2021 regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session since 5:30 for items listed on the agenda. We have all 7 board members present. Governor Pritzker continues a disaster declaration related to the COVID-19 pandemic for all Illinois counties. Currently, Phase 4 guidelines are in place, which limits the number of individuals in a space. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public who wish to offer in-person public comment are able to do so at this meeting. To adhere to Phase 4 guidelines, there will be a limited number of seats available in the meeting room. The board president will call the public comment speaker to the podium based on the order in which the speaker signed in. A sign-up sheet will be available at the entrance to the building until 7 p.m. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public will be allocated up to 3 minutes per speaker. The board president has set 30 minutes as the length of time for the public comment section of this meeting. Members of the public may stay in the meeting space if the limited number of seats remain available. The board meeting continues to be live streamed for viewing on the district's website. Written public comments can also be provided where the board will acknowledge the written comment, but they will not be read. See Agenda Item 1B for the links. All right, so with that, we will all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so tonight we have 2 recognitions, which is definitely the best part. So we will start with the state speech champion. And are they here or are they virtual? They're going to be virtual. Okay. Is that you? There we go. Is this you? Okay, so welcome to the board meeting, and Dr. Margaret Harrell is going to do the recognition. Can you turn your cameras on, please? And then Mr. Martin, did you have anything you wanted to say? Yeah, I know. Can I say something real quick? Go ahead.
All right, thank you. And it's great to see all our students. It's great to have something to celebrate on this occasion. And we'll move forward with the proclamation. Whereas the York Community High School speech team made history by placing 4th at the virtual IHSA state final on February 19th and February 20th with a score of 24 points, which was the most points in the York history. And whereas during the 2021 season, the team won 10 tournaments and finished 2nd at regional and sectional. And whereas senior James Golan was a double state champion in extemporary and impromptu speaking and made history by becoming the first York speechie who made 3 straight appearances in the state finals. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, the parents, the students, the family, District 205, and our greater community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to James Golan and faculty members Kevin Martin, John Forsyth, Mike Kadolji, Justin Ali, Kate Dowling, Joe Hansel, and Laura Thornton for their outstanding accomplishment. Thank you so much.
Okay. Congratulations and thank you. I know I have a daughter on the team, and it was quite, you did an amazing job to help them compete. So thank you to the coaches as well. And congrats, James. All right. Next is the National Merit Finalist. So if they could turn their cameras on. So we can see you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kaczynski, who's going to read the declaration and honor you, and we're so glad to see you here tonight.
Well, first of all, just a special congratulations to all of our students and also to their families for just a tremendous academic accomplishment, and also to their teachers and administrators over the many years of their time in District 205 that have helped them to grow and achieve at this type of level, especially in the challenging times that we've lived through in the past year. I think it's important to just take an extra moment to appreciate these types of accomplishments. So congratulations. Whereas the mission of the National Merit Scholarship Corporation is to recognize and honor academically talented students in the United States, the NMSC is recognized throughout America as the most prestigious indicator of academic excellence. And whereas of the 1.6 million entrants, some 50,000 with the highest PSAT, NMSQT selection index scores, calculated by doubling the sum of the reading, writing, and language and math test scores, qualify for recognition in the National Merit Scholarship Program. Whereas to be considered for a Merit Scholarship Award, semifinalists must fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level, where approximately 90% of the 16,000 semifinalists are expected to attain finalist standing. Whereas the following York Community High School class of 2021 students have been named as finalists by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation: Sam Ayers, Zoe Burkhardt, Jake Downey, Evan Frank, James Golan, Serena Joby, and Adrian Wong. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, District 205, the students, their families, and the community. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Community Unit District 205 express congratulations to these students and their families for their outstanding academic accomplishments. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for letting us, congratulate you from this great accomplishment. So you're welcome to stay and watch, or you can sign off. So thank you. All right. All right, and with that, we will move into the next section of the meeting, which is public comments. As with all public comments, please note that it is the board's practice to listen to public comments with interest in what is being shared and not to provide a response or to engage in discussions. In order for the board to maintain civility and decorum of the meeting, we ask you to be courteous and respectful to members of the board, our district leadership team, district staff, and the process for providing your public comment. Please state your name when you come to the podium. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes so we can hear as many speakers provide their comment. There's a timekeeper. They will let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and we ask that you wrap up your comment. Written public comments received will be acknowledged but not be read at the meeting. Read them following the meeting. So at this time, I would like to ask Deanna Emmerich to come to the podium. And if you just want to make sure the microphone is turned on.
Hello, my name is Deanna Emmerich. I recently spoke at the February 9th board meeting on behalf of my 3 sons who attend York, as well as the other high school students. Tonight, I am compelled to talk on behalf of the taxpayers. I appreciate that we're finally seeing progress in getting the kids back to school in person 5 full days a week, and I really hope that motion goes through as planned this evening. However, as a taxpayer of Elmhurst, I am adamantly opposed to the saliva testing requirement. This decision was just another example of the lack of research, investigation, and due diligence by our school administration before arrogantly putting this mandate in place. As you know, ISB has cited that at this time, the specific statutory and regulatory language that we believe is necessary to compel such testing and vaccination does not exist. Stated in another way, we do not know of any authority for a school district to mandate mandatory testing or vaccination for in-person attendance. I just do not understand the rationale behind these decisions the administration makes and the board goes along with by approving our tax dollars for something that is not only not necessary for the time frame these kids will be in school, but also not even being used as a protocol per the ISBE. The school administration is consistently making decisions that do not follow science, data, or common sense. They err solely on the fear-mongering of lawyers and insurance companies. This board has not only approved those decisions, but has also proven it has no ability to challenge the administration's decisions. It sickens me to think how easy it was for you to all approve over $600,000 in our hard-earned tax dollars for a mandate that is unproven and ineffective as implemented. Now, insert the inconsistencies of exemptions being made for a number of kids and the unspoken fact that these tests can be manipulated, especially if there is risk from these kids missing sports. This being a screening tool versus a diagnostic tool may keep the costs lower, but it also lessens the argument of effectiveness. The timing doesn't make sense to justify the dollars being spent. There are a handful of private schools that are attended by students in this community, the same community by which these metrics are being used to open. They're attended by students in the community, the same community by which metrics are being used to open D205, and yet no calamities have been reported, while being open full-time with no testing required. Why is this district too arrogant to follow by example?
30 seconds.
Just think about the initiatives for learning technology, innovation, hiring additional staff to help mitigate learning loss, and aids that could have been used with these dollars. This pandemic has put a spotlight on the weaknesses this district has from a learning, a technology, and facility perspective. Why would you choose not to use that money to fill in these gaps? While I appreciate that 4 of these board members have put a stake in the ground for in-person learning, you waited too long. The trust between this board, school administration, and the community of students and parents has been eroded.
3 minutes.
Make no false exceptions. You will continue to be accountable to us, the taxpayers.
Thank you. Michelle Shoemaker.
It has been 369 days since our kids had a full-time education. With the majority of families wanting a full-time return, tonight we need to receive a unanimous vote to make this a reality. Parents of 205 have devoted countless hours to fight for their kids' full-time education in a town they chose primarily for their reputation as being an outstanding school district. We are no longer that district. Nothing coming from this administration has been student-focused, consistent, transparent, or even clear since this disaster started. You have led this district with fear as your driver. Fear of lawyers, insurance, the teachers union, and the minority of parents that still scream about safety. Instead of full transparency, you spin it with metrics and data that you claim is following the science, and you have kept kids from being educated for a solid year. Voting for 5 full days for all grades, all schools, now is needed. As we prepare for next year, there's a lot of work to be done, and we need a full administration who is forward-thinking and thinks of what we can do and not what we can't. We need kids and teachers off of Zoom. Solutions have been suggested. Make the financial investment to make this happen. Stop the wasteful, unnecessary mandatory saliva screening. It was presented in November that if approved, it would be voluntary. Only 24% of parents even completed the survey. It was crystal clear and discussed by board members that it was not supported by the parents. But in true, sneaky 205 fashion, you spent $600,000 and changed it from voluntary to mandatory. This is one example of many that has continued to erode the trust the parents have in this administration. Sometimes you refer to the CDC, sometimes you don't. If you look at it in this example of saliva testing, it is not recommended. All sports, music, competitions, clubs, and social events need to be brought back in full. Our kids need normalcy and peer connections. Quarantining healthy kids, it has to stop. It is extreme and designed to keep more kids out of school versus in. It has been fact for months that spread does not happen in school. We need a full plan for a normal 21-22 year. It is time to lift the fear-based restrictions that have been imposed on our kids. No mask, no saliva testing, no quarantining, no remote if you stay home sick, and no remote learning if it's a snow day. It is time to be leaders and get our kids' education back to normal. And Board of Education, it is time for you to
30
take
seconds.
back the decision-making powers that you turned over to the superintendent, and it's time to relieve him of his duties. We need leadership that is focused on what we can do, that is solution-driven, not fear-based, and that does not constantly move the goalpost, does not look at cases per 100,000, and that instead listens to what its stakeholders need. We need leadership that puts the education and well-being of the students first. I ask you again to step up tonight. Vote yes for 5 full days in
3
person
minutes.
for every single school. It is
Thank
time
you.
to lead the district back to the
Maria
greatness
Camarados,
that led me
Paramitos.
and many more to raise our kids in this community. This has gone on too long.
On behalf of the kids, I implore you to open schools fully now. The district and teachers union make excuses, put up barriers, and do everything possible to keep kids out of school. D205 pledged to provide equal educational opportunities across the district. Well, we know that remote and in-person learning are not equitable, not even close. Remote is a poor substitute for education, and for months, this district has discriminated against the students of Bryan and Sandburg by offering them far less in-person instruction time. There's no transparency, no honesty. District communications are confusing and contradictory. By the time we try to make sense of it all and deal with the detrimental effects of these closures on our kids, it's a full-time job to have a student here. Why does this district refuse to consult with other schools and study what they've done to open? Their tactics are vetted. The answers are right in front of us. Parents have offered solutions too, but the answer is always no. When the DuPage County Health Department says we have enough layered mitigation in place to safely open, this district adopts the most stringent quarantine rules and mandates saliva testing, but only for kids. This discriminatory, illegal, and unethical testing program is a mess, which only caused the kids further mental anguish. The actions displayed by this district on the first day of this program were at best careless. Students were barred entry from buildings, corralled into rooms, and forced to spit on demand without parental notification. It endangered their safety and frightened them. The Orwellian tactics of this district are appalling, shameful. This district makes no decisions with kids as a priority, only on the recommendations of a mystery panel of so-called insurance professionals, medical experts, and lawyers. How did the other schools open without fear of litigation? By putting the kids first. In the beginning, when we didn't know much about COVID, we rightly took extreme measures. Now, the district hides behind excuses. We hear, follow the science. Well, the science says schools are safe. My father died from COVID. So I've done my research. Like most parents, I believe schools are safe We would not be here advocating for full-time in-person school if we thought it wasn't. You cannot lock kids out of school. You cannot give them a subpar education. It's your moral obligation to put these kids first. They're human beings, not science experiments.
30 seconds.
Those of you who do not want to open schools, who prefer to make excuses, and who do not want to put the 8,000 students and their well-being first, please step aside. Those who are committed to the kids, please stand up for them. It's time to rebuild the trust. This district is broken, and it's time to put the pieces back together. We're supposed to be partners in our kids' education, but this isn't how partnership works. Stop saying no. Open schools fully now. Thank you.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Peter Karamidos.
Hi, I'm Maria's husband. We have 2 kids in middle school, a 6th and an 8th grader at Bryan. And I want to thank you for this opportunity, by the way. And I want to thank everybody who's working hard, very trying circumstances. And I was encouraged to hear that we're going to be going back to school, but I want to remind everybody the importance to keep moving forward. I looked up on the CDC website in the area where you can track COVID by demographics. Again, the statistics are a little dated, but these are the most recent ones they had. Up to that point, there were 22.4 million cases in the US, and about 2 million of the total were in the 5 to 17 age group. And of the deaths at that point, again, 393,000 deaths, 204 of the total were in the 5 to 17 age cohort. And that's about the same number of kids that die from poisoning every year. 1,600 kids in 2019, according to the CDC, died in motor vehicle accidents. So if 8 times the number of kids are dying in motor vehicle accidents, why don't we ban driving? Well, it's obvious. We don't want to take 40 minutes to get to Mariano's by foot. We're willing to accept some risk for the convenience of having a car, even though we know our kids could end up as a grim statistic. As Maria said, my father-in-law died of COVID. We don't want to put our teachers at risk. My parents were both teachers. I moved from a wonderful neighborhood in the city, my whole family, for the schools. I couldn't be happier with the experience my kids have had, but we have to understand there's acceptable risk that we have to do. We love our teachers, we love our staff. We have to work within reason. And we have to remember our kids are going to judge us when they're adults. So I would just say that let's keep moving forward. And I think that the policy guidelines that the CDC points in a clear policy direction. Keep the at-risk kids at home, on remote learning if need be. At-risk teachers, we want to protect them. But for everybody else, follow mitigation practices and get the kids back in school full-time now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie Tamer.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. What I remember most when I served on your Focus 205 committee was the passion in this district to get the kids future ready. Now they aren't moving towards the future. They are at a standstill. Many are regressing. I stand before you today not as a voice for any other role in this community, but as a mother to 6th grade twins at Bryan Middle School and as a therapist hearing it all in this community. I'm not just advocating for my kids, but for all kids. It is time to open the schools full-time, all day, every day. And I'm extremely happy to see it on the agenda tonight. Today is March 16th. Last year on March 16th marked the first day of remote learning. My kids were remote learning today as well. A year later, Bryan and Sandburg need to open ASAP for the daily education, like other schools have been awarded in this district. It shouldn't be a privilege, it's the kids' right. I urge you to continue your plan of implementing full-day education daily. Certainly, you receive plenty of stories emailed to you from parents about their kids, but until you are on the receiving end of a crisis situation and getting multiple phone calls a week intervening, you can't possibly grasp what's going on outside the schools. Families live it daily. It's one thing when you hear it, but when you're a therapist in town, you're in the middle of it. My colleagues and I are dealing with an increase of issues this year in kids, such as self-injury, cutting, eating disorders, suicidal ideation and attempts, increased drinking, new drug use, running away, getting into trouble, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. The outpatient and inpatient facilities are filled. They have waiting lists. I have referred outside the state for inpatient. There is a lack of trust and faith in what the district could do, so you don't hear about it all the time from families. These are the kids that were not flagged in your surveys that went out. These are the kids whose names you're not seeing come across your desk. These are the kids I'm advocating for today. I am requesting you do what you set to do in Focus 205 and get these kids future ready. That was your promise, and it has slipped. Not due to COVID, due to decisions you all are making. Take a step out of your role and look at the storm from the outside. There is an urgency today to open up full-time. How many kids are hospitalized with COVID at Elmhurst? Do we have that statistic?
30
Because
seconds.
therapists can tell you how many clients we have hospitalized for mental health, inpatient and partial hospitalization programs. Time is precious for these kids. Bryan and Sandberg continue to receive an inequality of education to Churchville. The government shut us down in the spring and took away our choice. This time you, District 205, has been calling the shots and taken that choice away from us. Kids thrive on continuity, predictability, and schedule, and this district has taken that away as well. It was announced
3
that saliva
minutes.
testing will be used for full-time education daily.
Thank you.
Please live up to your word on that. Thank you.
Mia Allen? Mia Allen.
My name is Mia Allen, and I have a 5th grade son at Lincoln, an 8th grade daughter at Bryan, and a freshman daughter at York. I want to thank you for making 5 days a week happen at the elementary level. However, my son needs to be back to a full day, regular day with lunch. He has several IEPs for reading and writing and is receiving speech therapy. It's overwhelming to think about how far behind he might be. All kids in D205 need full time. My daughter at Bryan will receive 8 out of 20 partial days in March. Totally unacceptable after an entire year of COVID. I'm also respectfully asking for Dr. Moyer to step down immediately. If he is unwilling to do so, I'm asking the board to relieve him. It is clear from his communications in 2021, he has given up on D205 and the feelings are so mutual. He's not going to make the tough decisions that need to be made and made very quickly. I won't go into any more of the reasons as Kate spoke about it last night in her request, or in her comments. My 8th grade daughter is a girl that loves going to school. She was accepted into IC last week, and with an extreme uncertainty and lack of communication from the administration as to the plans what D205 will be doing next year, we have a very large decision to make. I'm sorry to say she's very much leaning in IC's direction because there is a clear path already. People are leaving Elmhurst and D205. My neighbor is so unhappy with D205 and how things have been run. They're putting their house on the market next week and moving to Colorado. All the private schools in the vicinity now have waiting lists. I know this is not what anyone wants to hear, but it is happening. Please fix this immediately. Get all D205 kids back in school full-time with lunch and activities. The parents in this town will not rest until this happens, I can assure you. I know we did not move here 5 years ago to send our kids to private school. I could have done that in Orland Park and been 1 mile down from my aging parents. Another item
30 seconds.
I'm asking for is to get kids off of Zoom. Please do what Jim Collins is requesting and asking to do, a robust learning plan, remote plan for kids that do have to stay home remote. We've had a year to work out all the logistics. The lack of urgency is alarming and extremely concerning. If you work on nothing else, please make this happen, that the kids will go back to full days as soon as possible.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Bazell?
Hello. I'm a mom of 2, one in 3rd grade and one in 6th grade. I moved to the suburbs to offer my children a consistent K-12 opportunity with the same community within. I've loved living in Elmhurst and I'm proud to live in this community. I've always said that I feel lucky to live here. Now it feels like by staying here, I am being selfish because my kids deserve better. The past year has been toxic and has divided our entire community. The district has pitted parents against one another. A common ground everyone has is that no one trusts the district. Not even one of us can participate in a survey without thinking our answer will help you manipulate the statistics. Our children are frustrated. My sixth grader several times has been mad at Group B or C for taking away his in-person day. Kids don't understand or care if we even out in-person days. They don't understand that. So as we move forward, thank you. In person, 5 days, we must learn from the past and ask what measures will be taken to ensure 5 full days now and in the future. Hybrid not being a solution. Middle school. Middle school does not remain 5 days the next year, and those kids don't get an inequitable, I can't say that. Anyways, there's going to be consequences if they don't go back full time. According to December 2020, D205 surge 5th grade to middle school transition presentation. 7th grade is the second most growth year, followed by only birth to 1 year. 2 district leaders said that during this crucial time, middle schoolers' brains change and rewire. The district is stunting our children's growth with this knowledge. This year, their bodies are trying to learn to process stress and uncertainty and a feeling of loss. They lose, they lose, they lose. Let all of our kids grow healthy. They deserve that much.
Thank you. Jen Rice.
Good evening. I would like to thank 2 individuals who are transparent in their words and their actions. And they are Jim Collins, your sign is proudly displayed in my yard, and Dr. Bagdasarian. These 2 individuals have my utmost respect in your visions for present and future. I implore those on the board, other district personnel, and current board nominees to start being equally transparent and promise to put our kids first now in a school district that is glaringly adult-focused. Here are a few common attributes I took from Education Week that make up an effective school district. Leadership. We are currently and have been for months sitting on a lame duck superintendent. He has 0 stake in the school district and should be stripped of his duties immediately. I ask the board to remove him of his duties today and to take over the execution and plan for reopening immediately. High expectations. If admins and teachers were held to high expectations, they would have been working around the clock to develop a reopening plan. Left and right, other schools have developed, announced, and are getting their kids back full-time with lunch, and we are sitting here talking about next school year. So board, I ask you to hold the administration to the high standards this community expects and deserves. Ongoing evaluation. As parents, we all want and need reassurance our kids are learning and growing. The grades will show elevated thanks to the rampant cheating and unlimited retakes, and they will not match the test scores that will likely stay hidden. If this is allowed to happen, it again screams adult-focused district and our kids fall behind. Goals and directions. There is 0 direction in our school district. There are no concrete plans in place. There is seemingly a lack of urgency in providing our kids the best learning opportunities possible. There is no communication for kids and parents who have to quarantine. I have fought so much for my kids this year, and every time I do, I bring a common sense argument and things get resolved. Why do I need to do this? I know so many parents who have just waved the white flag. The distrust continues to drive our amazing families out of this community. I said this past January, and since then have spoken or heard of many more families fleeing. Your lack of goals and directions are wounding. Your progress is snail pace while other schools are Usain Bolting back to the classroom, full schedule with lunch. These 4 attributes show why our district is failing and families continue to leave Elmhurst. As a district who pays their admins a salary of over $4.5 million a year,
30
it is
seconds.
also top in teacher salaries compared to other school districts. Again, adult-focused. Making it mandatory the kids spit but not the unvaccinated staff is adult-focused. Letting the union dictate the whole year for renegotiation tactics is bully behavior and adult-focused. Letting the continued remote hybrid model go on this long for the teachers and staff while it fails our kids is adult-focused. Immediately following the superintendent hire, I request
3
a public
minutes.
roundtable at York Stadium. ETC, district admin and teachers, the Board of
Thank you.
Education, and the community together for a Q&A, how we're going to move forward
Ben
and build
Fisher?
that trust in this community.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ben Fisher. I'm the father of 3 children in D205, 2 daughters at Hawthorne, age 7 and 6, and 1 son, age 4, who has an IEP at Madison. I want to start with some positivity. It's hard to describe the changes I've seen in my own children since they've returned to school. They are different kids. They are happy, they are full of life, they feel secure, and they light up every day when they say, COVID is getting better. Something as simple as having a consistent routine has eliminated the potty training regressions we saw during remote learning for my preschooler, the middle of the night wakings for my kindergartner, and the negative self-talk and tears over remote math for my 2nd grader. We knew being isolated at home was hurting our kids, but we didn't realize the extent of the damage until we saw this complete 180 they did once they were allowed to go to school every day. But make no mistake about it, it took us way too long to get to this point, and we cannot accept this as the end goal. Our children are happier, but they are still craving a return to normal, and they are still missing most of what makes school enjoyable. As an example, the other day, my 2nd grader, Avery, wrote a paper about Hawthorne School. It brought tears to our eyes because so much of what she wrote about is not happening this year. The 4th grade buddy program, the PTA hot dog lunch, the all-school dance, the Hawthorne Happening Halloween event, the spring variety show, and lunch. Her essay listed all of these things and closed with the line, "My school is epic." Only it's not epic this year. What she was actually describing was school in pre-COVID times. She cries now a lot of mornings over wearing a mask because it's not comfortable, and she has trouble hearing her teachers and classmates. She doesn't have lunch or group work or class parties. Sitting on the ground 6 feet away from classmates at snack time is not fun for her, and frankly, it's not good for her. People's skills aren't getting any practice this year. And also life skills. We just learned that my son with an IEP at Madison isn't learning how to hang up his coat and backpack because the school doesn't want kids congregating in the cubbies and potentially touching each other's personal items. So while we've made some progress, we are still failing at the goal of instilling a love of learning in the early years with our youngest kids. These ridiculous restrictions we have put on this year have a real cost to them. Given the significant improvement we have made with COVID, continuing to operate with these restrictions looks completely divorced from reality. It appears we are trying to attain a zero COVID strategy, which is very misguided and actually impossible. Finally, true normal to me is also moving toward a school year with no masks for our kids who are deemed extremely low risk.
30 seconds.
A recent study of over 25,000 students showed evidence that masks are in fact causing physical, psychological, and behavioral harm. Masks inherently make people more closed off and less social. This is not something we can afford to do to our kids any longer. We have placed enough of the COVID burden on them. We and our children were promised to return to normal after the vaccine, and that's exactly what we should get. We have made progress. Now let's make some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Rodriguez?
Good evening, board members. My name is Julie Rodriguez. I'm here tonight speaking to you not only as a parent of 3 children in District 205, but also as a clinician. I have been an infectious disease physician assistant for 17 years. During this pandemic, I've cared for the sickest patients suffering from COVID-19 in the ICUs in many of our local hospitals. During the surge, I was scared of getting sick myself and scared of bringing it home to my family. I changed out of scrubs in the garage and wouldn't allow my kids to touch me or go near me until I showered. I lost hours of sleep thinking and dreaming about COVID. Now, the thing that is causing lost sleep for me is worrying about schools. Since the surge, we have learned significantly more about this virus. Here are some facts. Fact number 1, virus spread is not substantial in schools. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, MMWR, January 2021 issue found minimal cases attributable to in-school spread in K through 12 schools, stating this data suggests that schools should remain open regardless of community positivity rates. Fact number 2, keeping children out of school is harmful and will have long-term devastating effects. We should all be aware of the increases in depression and suicide linked to school closures. As a Lancelot article has shown, when schools are not open, children lose an anchor in life. In addition, given that time spent in education shapes adult IQ, a pause in quality education could result in a serious lifelong impact on children's overall cognitive ability. And yet another analysis points to a potential decrease in life expectancy. Fact number 3, teachers, staff, and children are safe in classrooms. In a published study from MMWR, it was found that most positive cases within that school system were attributed to non-school related exposures. The vaccine has now provided extra protection. There are pages and pages of data and facts that I could continue to share, but I know my time is limited, and time is indeed of the essence. We are at the 1-year mark since our children in this community have been allowed to attend school full time. Let's follow the data. Science has shown we can, and we should, open schools full time. I've shared with you my point of view as an infectious disease provider. I come to you as a parent of 3 children in the district, representing other parents in the district and their children too. Please do the right thing
30
and
seconds.
move forward to get our kids back to school full time, permanently.
Thank you. Celia Grebs. We have one more.
Good evening. My name is Celia Grebs, and my children attend Lincoln and Bryan. I appreciate the board for calling upon the administration to present a plan tonight for full in-person education for all students. It is still extremely concerning to me that our administration has consistently taken the most conservative approach to interpreting guidelines. For example, many nearby districts have fully reopened with the language that they will distance 3 or 6 feet when possible. Communication from D205 regarding distancing has used the language strict adherence. This is an important distinction, and it's kept our kids out of school, especially our middle schoolers. In planning for the next school year, consider that every American adult that wants a vaccine will have had access to one. Also consider that children age 5 to 14 have approximately a 10 times higher risk of suicide than they do of dying of COVID. The same is true for the 15 to 24 age group. This data comes from a JAMA article published in December 2020. The suicide rate was pulled from 2018 data, and it's likely even more significant due to COVID. A return to normalcy is absolutely crucial for the mental health of our children. The doctors who led the highly cited Wisconsin study wrote, "Keeping our schools closed, or even partially closed, based on what we know now, is unwarranted, is harming children, and has become a human rights issue. Give all our kids a lunch, a break or recess, and a full in-person education. Show us you can do this now and reestablish trust in our community." Thank you.
Thank you. Hillary Rett, sorry.
Good evening. Hillary Reef. And like many of the others here tonight, I implore you to vote in favor of full day, 5 days a week. And while opening the doors to our schools full time is a huge step in the right direction, it will not single-handedly reverse the damage done over this last year. It's as if we dug a hole and pushed our kids into it. Opening the school is like giving them a ladder, but we still need to ensure they have the breadth of program options, tools, and a return to normalcy to make the full climb back out. In the superintendent's email on March 11th, there was a section under standardized testing, and it read, "The state of Illinois will be seeking a waiver that exempts the results from being used for accountability purposes." Exempt from accountability purposes. This phrase struck me. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader, and every orientation, parent night curriculum night held, I was reminded that these middle school years are a time of intense growing and learning for our children, second only to when they are birthed to 3 years of age. I was reminded how this learning is beyond academics, but it is social and emotional as well. I was reminded to let my children fail, let them learn accountability and grow. That accountability is essential for growing, for learning. And yet, this verbiage directly states that Illinois, our government, our unions, our educational leaders want no accountability for the year they've stolen from our children. From the devastating social and emotional trauma put upon these kids to an entire year of lost learning and academics. Are these same stakeholders fighting to get our students an exemption from submitting grades and/or test scores on college applications? It is my opinion that if these leaders do not have accountability or skin in the game, they will view their job as done as soon as the doors open. We as parents know the impact this year has had on our children will have resounding implications in the months to come, if not years. I would like our board and administration to share their position, opinions on this push by the state for exemption on standardized test scores. Perhaps I'm missing something. Is there any upside for our children if the state succeeds in this push? And if there is not a benefit to our children, I ask that you start holding the necessary parties accountable and stop putting the burden on our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. How many written comments?
There are 35 submitted comments.
Okay. Those will be posted. All right. We're going to move on to reports and presentations.
All right, tonight the first presentation is from Craig and Leanne from White, and they will be giving us the final look at Field Elementary School.
Thank you.
And I shouldn't say the final look, the final look at the
An update.
exterior of Field Elementary School.
Absolutely. I'm Leanne Meyer-Smith, Vice President at White & Company of Architecture, and Craig Siepke is here, Design Principal at White & Company. And we have the pleasure of presenting an update on the new Field Elementary School. Very exciting. Our team has been hard at work, and I'm happy to say we're slightly ahead of schedule, and we are on budget. Our next submittal will be in April with the design development package, and then we will be completing the construction documents in July and bidding the project out in the fall. So Craig is going to start us off and talk about some of the plans and an update on the exterior of the building. Craig?
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Moyer and distinguished guests, thanks for having us here. It's good to see you all again. It's been a while. As Leanne has indicated, we've been hard at it since the last time we were in front of you, looking at, design is an iterative process. So going through, talking with the staff, the principal, working through some of the many challenges that we have up front when we go through the design process. We've had some modifications based on all these conversations that we've been having, and as well as looking at the referendum budget and aligning all of that information into the floor plans and the elevations that you're going to be viewing tonight. So as we go through, we have a few slides to share with you. Some of them are going to look familiar from when we were with you a while ago. If we could click the first diagram that we're looking at over here is the site plan. North is over to the right. So like we showed before, we are keeping the building more on the north side of the site, kind of pulling it back just a tad, and then kind of rounding out some of the other features on the site. We're looking at having the playgrounds, the hard surface play, and all that really along the east side of the site. And then you'll notice from a little difference from what we showed before, the parking and the queuing lanes that are on the south end of the site. We've been able to expand that a little bit, got a little bit more square footage on the site with purchase of the property that was up for sale a while ago. So now we're looking at about queuing anywhere between 24, 25 cars on site, getting them off of the street, which is going to help with congestion in the area for sure. And we were able to even include a few more parking stalls. So really kind of a nice add and update from what we showed before. Buses will still be pulling off into a curb cut off of Emroy Avenue. And pretty much the main entrance and all the other student entrances remaining the same from what you saw the first time that we were in front of you. Next slide, please. This slide here is really a depiction of the floor plans. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of counterclockwise rotate north 90 degrees counterclockwise. So north is up. And over on the right side of the slide, we're looking at the first floor plan. Little modification, a little update to the floor plan in terms of really looking at the square footages, and the relationships of all the spaces are pretty much the same than what you saw before. What we did want to point out is looking at the main entrance over on the first floor on the right side there, you can see the pink or the purple area. That's your administration area. And if you remember sort of the entry sequences that we've been implementing throughout the district with all the other elementary schools will remain intact over here. Thereby we have a locked vestibule where visitors and guests will have to check into the school, get cleared for security reasons, then go into the admin area, and then out to the school to do the business that they're doing. So pretty consistent with all the other elementary schools that we're doing. Once we get past there, you'll notice a rather large yellow bar of space that separates the orange classroom areas from the rest of the school. That is considered the dining area as well as the faculty lounge area. And then right in the center of that yellow space, you'll notice sort of a white box with some lines in it. That is the depiction of the location of the gathering or learning stair that we are going to be featuring in this particular area. That's going to allow some streamlined access up to the upper level library that's on the second floor. Before we go up there, however, I want to point out the location of the gymnasium, i.e. the tornado shelter, inclement weather shelter that we have. That's the green box just to the right of the main entrance. And then some of the supports, functions, and spaces, loading docks, electrical closets, and so forth, you'll see in the gray to the right of that. Just to the north of the yellow bar that we were talking about, you'll see a series of groupings of orange spaces. Those are the classroom neighborhoods that we are locating on the first floor. Kindergarten, first and second floor, all arranged in a sort of a pinwheel concept around, again, another stair that connects the first and second floor so that collaboration activities and so forth can happen on a more streamlined regular basis. Moving to the diagram on the left side, more or less the same type of footprint with regards to the classrooms. Third, fourth, and fifth grade arranged around a central sort of core atrium area. And again, with access to the first floor to get out to the playground, main entrance, and so forth. And then moving southward, again, where we had the gathering stair, the library up above the dining area, that's in the yellow area. And then flanking the perimeter of the library, combination of music, art, and makerspace. And those two ladder spaces really have access to an outdoor patio that the classroom activity can spill out onto, kind of a nice feature that if you remember we had located or implemented over at Lincoln. We're taking the same opportunity over here of doing the same kind of access to the outside, which certainly in this day and age is becoming more and more critical, prominent, and desired by the staff as well as the kids. Let's see. Other spaces to point out that you see in purple that are closer to the classrooms are the student service areas. Again, primarily those spaces are located on centrally located on the first floor off of the cafeteria and closer to the classroom spaces. And then with some selected pink spaces or resource breakout, small group spaces scattered throughout the building, mostly towards the entrances to the neighborhood classroom grade level spaces or neighborhoods. So, does anybody have any questions with regards to the diagrams? This is basically just an update to what you've seen before. So, again, just a kind of a tweaking and of the square footages and aligning with the budget. All right. So, in addition to some of those updates on the floor plan, what we'd like to do now is share with you the update of the images that we've been working on. The first rendering that before we get to those, just want to remind everybody the inspiration for what we were doing with regards to the outside. So the diagram that or the next slide you're going to see over here really is a compilation of images that we've taken from around the neighborhood over here. If you remember, what we like to do is draw our inspiration from the surrounding area. And in this case, obviously the residences are really the primary drivers behind what we're trying to accomplish and trying to relate to. In this instance, because it is a school, it is an institution, we do have, and we would like to implement something a little bit more contemporary in terms of the feel of its volumes, but really the colors and even the textures that we're going to be using in the images that you're going to see shortly are drawn from the houses that are surrounding the area. And this is just a few images or a couple examples of those colors. Having worked with the staff and going back and forth with the colors and the materials, we settled on a color palette that was a little bit more restrained, maybe from some of the yellows and the oranges that we see in the area, and sticking with more of the cooler colors. And certainly the stones and some of the masonry that we see as accent on the houses are going to be prominent in some of the materials that we're using on the outside. And let's get right to it. Here it is, the first image. This is standing at the corner of Emroy and North Avenue, and gives you an indication or at least a view of the classroom neighborhoods, both the first and second floor. Actually, 2 of the 3 classroom neighborhoods. And then in the back over there, you see sort of the glass wall. That is really an outcropping of the library on the second floor with the faculty workroom on the bottom. And if you remember, the reason why we're kind of highlighting the glass over there so that it actually acts as sort of the beacon, if you will, announcement that you're kind of entering Elmhurst and certainly School District 205 as well. So looking at some of the materials, again, the colors, so picking up on some of the verticality of the houses in the surrounding area, concentrating on the blues and the greens, and combining that with some wood tones on the outside, similar to Lincoln, but not a exact replica. We actually kind of look at this and talk about this in the office as the cousin, I guess, if you will, to Lincoln. We recognize the fact that these are neighborhood schools, and while we don't want to make and because of that, we don't want to make the schools look identical, but certainly because they are in in the Elmhurst district, we would like them to at least relate to one another. We hope we've accomplished that, and you agree. On the base of each one of the neighborhoods, you'll see the use of masonry, some gray masonry that we're going to be implementing over here. And then some of the bigger volume spaces, the stairs and so forth, we're looking at a cut stone, again, to kind of warm up and texturize the outside to make it a little bit more welcoming and less institutional. So that's what we're looking at over North Avenue. One thing I do want to point out, we did have a conversation, if you remember, about having so much grass area and so forth between North Avenue and the building itself. And so there was this conversation about security and so forth. One of the things that was left off in the conversation was the fact if you could look at the sidewalk that runs along North Avenue, there is about 2.5 foot difference in elevation between the grass area, the first floor of the school and the street. Acts as a natural barrier. It's a concrete barrier. So that's primary one. For a car to jump that would be extremely, extremely difficult. You'll also notice that we've included a fenced-in area, sort of at the corner and around each one of the neighborhoods. And so we've addressed sort of the security concern as well as the traffic concern in 2 layers, if you will, of safety and a barrier. So that's what we're looking at over from North Avenue. Let's go then. Sure. Yes, yep, right in between, right outside the stairs. Each one of the neighborhoods will have one of those concrete pads, and actually they will be surrounded by some built-in bench seating as well. The thought here is, and the intent is that this is where more formal instruction, outdoor instruction could happen, as opposed to, say, the playground area that happens in the back, where that's a little bit more unstructured. Although happening on a scheduled basis, it's a little bit more free time for the kids. Over here, this is more intentional and thought to accommodate more structured activity for the kids. Sure.
If you go back to that slide, RJ, so where are the doors that the kids are exiting? You know, like pros and cons with that fence, right? I mean, because kids are walking home north. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to figure out.
Well, it might be helpful if we go actually back to the floor plan, then you can see where the doors are located. Yep. Can we go back one more? One more floor plan. There you go. So actually what happens here is we have them in several locations right over here, and it's not showing in the doors over here, but it happens at the stairwells. And that's where the kids are actually going to be able to go out. Is that what you're? So the outdoor play venues are right outside those stairs.
I'm just thinking as they're coming in and exiting, as they're walking, some of the older kids, right? You know what I mean? Do they have to walk south to get up beyond that fence and then walk up to their neighborhood?
Well, some of the specifics of arrival and departure are things that the building teams will work out closer to the opening of the building. But the pre-concepts that have been designed, I don't anticipate the actual traffic flow to look a whole lot different at the beginning or the end of the day than it currently does. The pickup and the drop-offs are essentially in the same area. And so I don't think that their patterns, I mean, they're restricted, right? You know, based on where they're located. So I don't think that their patterns are going to change a whole lot.
I just want to, I like the protection of the fence, but I also want it to be doable for the kids who are walking to school and walking out, that they, you know, I'm thinking winters here, you know what I mean, rain. So I'm just saying, keep in mind that, whether we determine that fence situation.
Absolutely.
And when the kids can get in and out.
And we have a couple more rounds of conversations with the staff and the leadership over at the school. So those are the kinds of things that, as Dr. Moyer indicated, are really going to be happening in more detailed conversations in this next round, for sure. All right. Any other questions? We have one more image that we want to show you. We have in this sequence. And there you go. So the lower volume is the administration area. On that roof is the outdoor patio with the art rooms right behind it. And then where you see the signage over here, that is the tornado shelter, the gymnasium. So your parking lot really happens farther to the right. Here's your administration. And in the back over here, just kind of peeking out, is the classroom neighborhood, one of the first classroom neighborhoods. So we have a ways to go. We have some conversations to be had yet with our landscape architects and so forth. Again, that has a big impact in terms of softening up the building itself. But really, the main entrance looking right over here. And then you can see right along over here. That's going to be a nice landscaping bed at the main entrance, sort of plaza area, again, to welcome visitors and actually offer an opportunity for kids as they're waiting for their parents to be picked up, or visitors congregating parents and so forth. Kind of a nice area at the front of the building. Any questions? Yep.
So Craig, along this side of Emery, I'm thinking about of safety and security. It looks too direct to me. So when you're talking with the landscaper and kind of these outdoor areas, could we keep in mind some more natural security barriers that we can put up? Because this, to me, other than a curb here from Emroy, seems like kind of a direct access to those front doors, which makes me a little nervous. So if we could build in within budget some kind of natural landscape function that could serve as a security purpose for those entrances, that would be something I would
Absolutely, we'll take a look at
love
that.
to see if that's available.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Craig, I just wanted to say that I know you made some changes from the last time we saw this, and I just want to say that I love what you did. And it's hard for me to remember. I think the bottom might have been a little bit darker the last time in the materials that you had proposed, and I just love the brightness and the colors here. So thank you for taking those things into consideration. I think it looks great.
Yeah, it's a great observation. We just actually kind of flipped it, and we put some of the more contrasting materials and colors up on the upper floor. Again, a little bit more reminiscent of Lincoln.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Looks great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That looks great.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Our next steps, just to let you know, now that we've gone and kind of, we're setting the outside over here. Again, we are meeting with the staff. We're going to be talking and getting into more detail about the insides. And so the next time we come back to you, we're going to be able to share with you some of the embellishments and the updates that we're going that we'll have inside the classrooms, some of the more exciting spaces, the public spaces, such as the library, the dining area, and so forth. So a lot more to come. We got a lot more to do, a lot more excitement to be had, and that's it.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'll tell you what, this is the first in-public presentation I've given in a year, and I'll tell you what, it's like riding a bike, huh? Woo.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next one is gifted program analysis results and then the recommendations.
Correct. So Leslie Weber is our Director of Instructional Services. I've been working with Marianne and Nikki on this project primarily, but as she'll explain, there's been extensive, just to remind you that this started almost 2 years ago as part of our annual program analysis cycle. And so we took a look at the results of last year and spent this year trying to come up with a thoughtful proposal to bring forward. And that's what she's going to share with you at this point. So you will see there was an extensive process with multiple layers of outreach and involvement. So Leslie, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Moyer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come and present. Tonight, I'll be reviewing the outcomes of our gifted instruction analysis that was, like Dr. Moyer mentioned, completed during the 2019-2020 school year, and also present some recommendations based on that information gathered, consultations with Susan Corwith from Northwestern Center for Talent Development, as well as Dr. Marcia Gentry from Purdue University. Susan is with us this evening as well and is available to answer any questions you may have. She's via Zoom, so she's the picture that's been on the screen. She's the only one left. So, yeah, no, she's been patiently, there she is. She's been patiently waiting. Thanks, Susan. Okay. So what I'd like to do first is, as Dr. Moyer mentioned, as part of our operational plan, a program analysis cycle was created to gather information on the specific services and programs. The REACH program analysis was part of the larger effort, just as we did the special education program analysis previous years. The goal of the program analysis was to gather data from stakeholders and to provide us with information to improve the implementation of services for our gifted and talented students, as well as all of our learners moving forward. In 2019-2020, a steering committee was created during that school year to help guide and steer the data collection and review information that was gathered through surveys and observations. This committee was comprised of REACH teachers, parents, and administrators. Go ahead, RJ, you can flip. So again, this slide just kind of shares what I just presented. In May, if you remember, that far ago, we did present the data and information from the program analysis. I will go over a little bit of that just to kind of refresh your memory as to what we found prior to sharing the recommendations with you this evening. Go ahead, RJ. So in order to explain some of the proposed changes, I just want to share and review what the current services look like for our students. Our current gifted program provides services for students who are demonstrating exceptional intellectual ability and who need experiences extending beyond the regular curriculum. We currently provide enrichment in ELA and acceleration in math in grades 3 through 8 for students who are identified for our services. The enrichment in English language arts is based on the grade level standards, but uses above grade level texts and complex creative tasks. In the elementary setting, the services are 30 minutes daily, and at the middle school level, students take a separate course replacement. Our math program provides students with a double accelerated pathway currently, and the trajectory for math that leads into high school. At both elementary and middle school, these are replacement courses. Students are pulled out for math instruction from the general classroom in elementary, and at the middle school level, they take the appropriate math courses. Go ahead, RJ. Our current identification for the REACH program includes the use of data from MAP achievement tests, the COGAT, which is a cognitive ability assessment, as well as teacher recommendations. Once students are identified using the rubrics, parents do have an opportunity to appeal this process. The rubric identifies students who consistently show grade level performance in comparison to their peers, and it is typically the top 5%. From our program analysis, there were several outcomes based on the observations, the data gathered, the surveys, stakeholder feedback. Go ahead, RJ. So through our process, as we shared in May of last year, we were able to identify several outcomes. The following outcomes were identified as being important and noted for improvement. As part of our data, we noted that students who are Hispanic and Black were underrepresented, as well as students who were identified as low income, English language learners, and students with IEPs in both the areas of math and ELA. We also noted that females were underrepresented in the area of math. Based on this information and the ranking of priorities by our stakeholders, we know that we need to support the identification process in different ways. We would like to move the testing and identification process in 2nd and 5th grade to the spring if possible to gain more timely and accurate information. We were actually able to implement that this year. We just finished our COGAT testing with 2nd grade, and our 5th graders took it about a month ago, and they also just recently took MAP. So we have more accurate and current data, and that step from stakeholder feedback last year was something we could easily do and make an impact on our identification process. We are also looking to use more local norms, which helps to ensure a more equitable access to services. We currently use national norms, and that can sometimes cause us to miss students. It allows us to add additional layers to the identification process so that, for example, the top 5% of a school, and then look at subgroups within the school as well to allow accessibility to the program. We would like to also provide opportunities for talent development for students in grades K through 2. This will allow students to have exposure to critical and creative thinking opportunities, and when we see talented students in those early ages, we can foster their learning and that creativity, which will help then in the identification process as they now have the skills, and we can see that through some of the assessments we do. We also would like to clearly identify those services for our gifted students. In the area of curriculum, instruction, and services, we want to review the curriculum and instructional practices used to support all our learners. In doing this, it will allow for us to personalize learning for all students, focus on the standards, and provide more robust and rigorous curriculum to support the standards, as well as provide teachers with knowledge and tools to meet the needs of all students. Additional support and resources to meet the social emotional needs of students, as well as the gifted and talented learners, will be looked into as well. We also need to review the continuum of services that we provide our students and potentially add an additional layer of services to support them. So those were the outcomes and the priorities that the stakeholders had looked at, and that's kind of what led our recommendations that I will share this evening. Again, our partners in creating some of these recommendations were Susan Corwith from the Northwestern Center for Talent Development. She was able to help us review our data, shared feedback on information that was potentially missed from the data and allowed us to go back and gather more, and then also reviewed and shared feedback on our potential options of program services moving forward. Oh, it's Susan. Sorry.
What was that? Got it. So you're not hearing me say any of these words? Okay, all right. Hold on a second there.
You're fine. Hmm? What? No, I'm okay.
Can you hear us now at all? Hello, hello? Still not? All right, 1 second. When I talk, you hear it?
Wait, Mary. So they can hear on the live stream, just she can't hear in Zoom. Wait, Mary. So they can hear on the live stream, just she can't hear in Zoom. According to the comments on the YouTube, they can hear now. But when the graphic is shown, they're saying they can't. Sound came on as soon as you stopped sharing. Yeah. Okay. You can either have sound or loud.
But Susan can't hear us right now. Everyone else in the stream can.
Don't worry about Susan, just move on. Yeah, she'll catch it on the live stream. If you want to, yeah.
I've got it. I'm back. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Okay. So at the building level, in addition to total school cluster grouping at elementary, to the K-2 talent development at the elementary level as well, we're looking at increasing our time for the enrichment of ELA at the elementary level. They currently have 30 minutes in addition to their general language arts course. What we are looking to provide is 60 minutes during their language arts class as kind of an opportunity for them to dig deeper, go broader, and be able to attack the standards in more in depth. The acceleration piece of the in-building pathway would be that, for example, if we do total school cluster grouping and we would have acceleration of math, our 3rd grade students would move into the 4th grade classroom for math. Our 4th grade students would move into the 5th grade classroom for math. And then our 5th grade students would receive the 6th grade course, Math 1, by our gifted instruction teacher. This then allows us time for that gifted instruction teacher to have the 60 minutes of ELA with 3rd graders, 4th graders, and 5th graders for enrichment.
Would you say what you explained? Will you say that one more time? I didn't.
Sure.
Thank you.
So for math, instead of pulling out for math services, what the students would do is the 3rd grade students that would qualify for math services would go to the 4th grade classroom. 4th grade would go to 5th grade. And then our 5th grade students obviously don't have a 6th grade classroom to go to, but we would use our gifted teacher to teach the 6th grade Math 1 course to them. And then that also provides us time for us to have 60 minutes for each grade level for enriched ELA. Our last kind of layer of services or support is the proposal of a district-wide magnet program or magnet classroom. We would allow for our highest achieving students who need a more comprehensive learning experience to have a compacted curriculum that would include math, language arts, science, and social studies. This would allow us to have a thematic base so that our themes would be more of science and social studies themes, and then we would attack the standards and teach the standards of math and literacy through those units of study. It would be more inquiry-based. It would give a more student agency to the students in that class. We are looking to house the magnet classroom at Fisher Elementary. It would allow for those students who need that comprehensive learning plan, and also Fisher would be a logical place to house that program for several reasons. It would provide an opportunity for our dual language students to have exposure to the magnet program if they were to qualify as well. Okay, RJ, you can flip it. So with the pyramid that I showed you, it's more of a continuum of services for our students, if you really think about it. When we did our research and we met with stakeholders, a lot of the pieces of the puzzle were that in our continuum of services for students district-wide, when we get to the side of services to support our higher level learners, all we have is they're either in reach or they are not. So what we wanted to do is add some layers of support in services to support the different needs of the higher achieving and gifted students, but also add the layer of how are we supporting all of our students? How are we allowing them opportunities to talent develop in K2? How are we providing opportunities for those students who we've heard before are just on the cusp and don't necessarily qualify for certain services, but they still need a little bit more? And so through total school cluster grouping, through the professional learning that we're going to do with our teachers, to reviewing and developing our curriculum a little bit more, we would like to make sure that those services are being supported in all layers. Again, just a quick review on the magnet classrooms. It would be for students who are high achieving in both math and language arts. It would focus on interdisciplinary units of study based on themes from science and social studies. That would allow for more inquiry-based units, would allow for more student agency, and the ability to engage more deeply in topics. We would also, in the magnet classrooms, focus on specific learner characteristics of gifted students, specifically their social emotional learning needs, as well as their executive functioning needs. And then having the magnet classroom at Fisher would allow for dual language students to participate as well. Go ahead, RJ. So this, I know it's a lot, but as we know, the rolling out of any new continuum of services, any changes or adaptations in curriculum takes time. And so if you look this current year, the 2021 school year, we have been doing initial planning for the K2 talent development, for the building-based ELA and math, enrichment and acceleration, as well as planning for the magnet services. We're also in the spring, moving forward, Dr. Gentry will be training and reviewing total school cluster grouping with our district administration as well as our building administrators. So we're starting there. Her training and meeting with these teams will help her gauge what professional learning our teachers will need in the fall. So she wants to hear from the building principals, find out how they feel their staff is with personalized learning and differentiation practices, with social emotional learning needs, with building equity in the classroom. So she's going to meet with us at the end of April to then potentially build our professional learning for the next 2 years with our staff. Then the 21-22 school year, which would be next year, we are looking at potentially training all elementary staff members. We know that this is a comprehensive program, total school cluster grouping, and we want all of our teachers, our specialists, to be engaged and professionally trained. That will take place in the fall, and then throughout the course of the year, through late arrivals and different opportunities, the team from total school cluster grouping will interact with our building principals and go into schools. The purpose of that is, even though we're not doing total school cluster grouping next year, the skills that the teachers are going to learn in their professional learning is applicable no matter what your class composite is and what continuum of learners you have. So we want them to be practicing, using those strategies and skills, and then kind of being able to build those relationships with the team from Purdue. In 21-22, we also are going to work on the development of curriculum and resources for the K2 talent development, as well as the magnet program, as well as looking at the development of ELA curriculum and providing some more opportunities in math for level 4 kind of questioning and activities. We're also going to work on this summer and the fall the new identification process that would be implemented to use to identify students who would participate in the magnet and the building level services for the 22-23 school year. In the 22-23 school year, we would like to implement cluster grouping in grades 1 through 5. We will do an initial implementation for K2 talent development. Our grade 3 students would begin new services at the building level, and we would also have our magnet classroom. And then continuing on to 23-24, total school cluster grouping would be monitored and supported with professional learning opportunities and Dr. Gentry and her team meeting with our administrators. We would review and revise the curriculum as needed for K-2 talent development. And then in 23-24, grades 3 and 4 would receive new services at the building level, continued services, and we would also do grade 3 and 4 magnet classroom. So by 24-25, grade 3, 4, and 5 at the building level will have new services and supports, and we would also have the established grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5 magnet classrooms. Last one, RJ. So we know that communication and regularly communicating with the community is extremely vital for the success of this transition to these new services. We currently have several informational meetings for our families in regards to the identification process, appeal process, and the program itself already every year. What we know is we will need to add some additional nights for presentation like this, just letting the community know kind of what our thoughts are for the program and the continuum of services, as well as kind of keeping updates with the community. We also know, and we will have Dr. Gentry come to speak to families in the winter of next year, so that because total school cluster grouping wouldn't start till the following year, we want parents to have an understanding and opportunity to ask questions, and Dr. Gentry is willing to do a couple of informational nights for us. The communication timeline is outlined above, and I'm sure, like I said, we'll have to have some more nights put in there, but this is our tentative plan right now. I guess the work that we've been doing, Marianne, Nikki, Dr. Gentry, and Susan, has all looked and focused on a continuum of services for students. You know, right now the REACH is the REACH program, and it's kind of a one size fits the gifted learner, but what we want to do is we want to provide a continuum of services to support all the different levels of learners, and we hope that this will do that. It's not perfect right now. You know, as we go through and plan over the course of the next couple of years, we might need to tweak a few things, but this is something I'm proud of, and I know our team is proud of, is that we really wanted to listen to the community and know that we wanted to provide more for not just our higher achieving students, but for all of our students.
All right, thank you. Questions? Chris?
Could you just review the community collaboration process that you used to derive these recommendations, please?
Sure. So in 2019-2020, we had a development of a steering committee. There were a couple parents on that. The steering committee was small because it just kind of guided the direction that our team was going to take in doing the research. So it had a couple parents, some staff members, some administrators. From there, we developed and did a couple of things. We did some student and family surveys digitally where parents filled out different things and looked at what the focus was, the goal of the program, and what were some concerns. We took all of that data and information, and what we did was we kind of not prioritized it, we listed it, so to speak. And we had a community night, so we had a parent night here where parents were able to come and collaborate together. And what they did is they looked at all of the different things that came up as necessary needs or changes or things that people wanted to see, and then they kind of prioritize them. What was something that would be a quick win that would impact? So for example, the identification process, shifting that to the spring was something that didn't need a lot of finagling, so to speak. We were able to just move that to get more current and accurate data for this year. And then the stakeholders went through. We did it with the parents and we did it with the teachers. And so some of those themes that I talked about, like the talent development, ensuring that not just the curriculum that's used for students who qualify for the services, but also the general curriculum for students was a little bit more robust and met the needs of the learners, providing teachers with the toolkits they needed to support the learners that they have and the continuum of learners they have in their classroom. Those were all themes that came from that work and data.
Got it, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then just how does this implementation timeline compare to comparable programs at peers?
You mean in the let me just make sure I'm understanding you. So in comparative districts and stuff and how they move and change, is that what you're
I'm just
asking?
curious, you know, the timeline, you know, it's extended, and I'm just wondering if that's typical for a program of this nature or not.
So whenever you do a program change or a change of services, It is, I was reviewing Barrington when I was doing this, and they had like a 5-year timeline of how they were doing different things, gathering information, planning, curriculum work. So it is very comparable to what typical program changes or changes of service take about 3 to 5 years to implement, with a constant and continuous improvement cycle running through as well.
Got it.
Chris, the one of the big things, just to be clear, is that the students that are receiving existing services, it's really almost impossible to like just all of a sudden switch them in the middle of their sequencing to a new program. So that's why, part of the reason why it takes so long is you also phase out the students that are in their current program.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I mean, just my initial feedback is that I like it. I think that there's a need for additional layers at the younger grade level, so I'm a fan of that. And I think we do need to drive for kids who are in reach. Ideally they would have differentiated outcomes when they're assessed relative to kids who are not. In that particular subject matter. So if that's not taking place, then that's a clear indicator that the rigor probably needs to go up. And so I'm happy to see the set of recommendations, and it sounds like there's been quite a bit of collaboration along the way in deriving that. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
Leslie, do you, when we got that presentation, and I think Marianne, was that in October that you gave, or?
The program analysis
Yeah.
one, I think was in May. It ended up being.
Oh, May. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's all a blur.
And can you remind me, but were we seeing that, our investment really didn't get, like we were kind of getting the same results whether kids were in the program or not in the program?
Correct,
Is that
especially
correct?
for language arts. We weren't seeing the growth that you should typically see when you have, they were growing at the same rate, and Marianne can elaborate too. But we weren't getting, so to speak, the bang for the buck. We didn't feel like the students were growing and progressing as much as they should. It was very, very similar between if you were participating in the program and not participating in the program.
Okay. So do you feel that, the way you've done this laid out this program, that it will improve results actually for both groups?
Mm-hmm.
Both those that would be in the program and those that would not be?
Correct. So one of the pieces that is extensive in the research for total school cluster grouping is that not just the higher achieving students grow, but it allows for the students in the classrooms, all of them, to gain confidence, have self-efficacy, and academically grow. The other piece with the ELA portion for the kids that are in the program, which I didn't mention. So in the middle school, we're still going to keep the enriched ELA classes, but we collaborated with the department chair from the high school, and we talked about incorporating, as we review the curriculum, incorporating some of the skills that students would need to be successful in some of the AP courses. So, for example, in 6th grade, they potentially would focus on rhetoric and rhetorical analysis reading, rhetorical analysis writing, open argument, some of those skills that they don't work on right now, but we would like to incorporate those. In 7th grade, they would focus on rhetoric and figurative language. In 8th grade, more of rhetorical devices, synthesis reading, argumentative and open argument, and really build a good foundation for some of those kids who would then potentially take those AP courses.
Okay, awesome. So what I like is that there's obviously a place for the kids who place into, the top, but then a lot more challenge for the kids that maybe don't quite, they're not in that top certain percentage. Because I think that's always where you see people feeling like, either their student or the student, needs that little nudge and can set the bar higher. So I like that. The other piece that I really am glad that we're addressing is the students who would potentially, who have a choice, right, to be in the magnet program, like they wouldn't have to do
Right.
that.
So
Am I correct?
If a student were to qualify based on the criteria for the magnet, but their families did not want them to attend an alternate location for the magnet program, they would still receive those services, math and ELA at the building level. It wouldn't be as comprehensive as the magnet program, but it would still allow them to have those services and supports at the building level.
Okay. But part of that, so when you say supports, is also like executive functioning and some social emotional pieces that tend to come along with students who maybe that have that talent
Yes.
base. Is that correct?
Yes, they're very different learners.
Mhm.
And right now, as we put them together in one program, we're really not necessarily meeting the needs of some of those. There's still a few kids that might stand out in that group. And so this allows those students to have the supports and services they need, as well as then the kids that still are higher achieving and higher learning students, and provide them the services as well.
Okay. All right, thanks. Somebody else? Margaret?
Thank you for this presentation. I very much am in support of the concept. I think it will help for the individual development of all our students, which is important. I just have a couple of questions on some of the details on the implementation of some of these pieces. So my first question, you talked about a K-2 talent development. Can you give me a little more information about what that might be, what it would look like?
Sure. So in kindergarten through second grade, right now, sometimes you have teachers who start to see characteristics of students who are showing more creative thinking or critical analysis skills. And we don't really have a lot of curriculum and resources that support that. So what we would like to do, and it would be a gradual implementation, is we would like to develop a curriculum where our gifted instructors would then support those students. Maybe it would be pushing in a few minutes a week to kind of give them other opportunities to expose them to different kind of relevant real world application pieces. And it wouldn't just be certain kids, it could also be just the entire class. It could just be depending on the needs of the classroom, and also being able to collaborate with those classroom teachers to engage them in being able to provide some of those opportunities for their students in all subject areas. In doing some research, U46 does do this too. April Wells is the director there, and I've looked at, they've done some their own development. So a lot of districts who have the K2 development kind of almost create their own curriculum and resources, and so we'll kind of use some of the resources and speak to some of the districts that are currently doing this to kind of create our own, to meet the needs of our own students.
Thank you. And one of the things I like, there's no uniform initiative like this that exists currently. Is that correct?
We do not have anything right now in our district that supports
for
those.
K-2. All right, great. Thank you for that one. Second one, I think you began to talk about that. You started mentioning some of the other schools who might have similar programs, and whether it's the individual, the leveling piece, or the magnet school. Can you give some examples of other groups?
Sure. So when we've done what we did, part of our process in 2019, 2020 is some of our principals that were on our steering committee reached out to different communities and different districts to kind of see what they did. I will say that it's funny, but a lot of the districts are really in the same place we are. They're trying to either improve their process, they've just finished improving their process, it's on their calendar to address some of the needs, because there really is, it's an ever-changing piece to service our gifted and talented students. So when we were looking at pieces like this, so for example, Barrington 220 has a similar design and format. They do have a self-contained magnet for grades 3 through 5. And then they do enriched and accelerated as well. So they do an enriched ELA and an accelerated math. Indian Prairie has Project Arrow. It's similar. They don't, I'm sorry, I can't remember if they have a magnet. Some have a magnet, some do not. It just depends on the student population and the need. Glen Ellen was in 1920 starting a program analysis. So we're right in line with them. They do more of supplemental and not replacement, whereas our math is replacement courses. Glen Ellen does a lot of supplemental pieces. Let me see, Wheaton has a PACE program. It's PACE. It's in grades 3 through 5. It is replacement math. And then they have enrichment and some acceleration in reading, focusing on critical and creative thinking. So a lot of the districts are either doing the enriched or the accelerated, a combination of both. Some have magnet, some don't. But I think the theme of most of the programs that we've looked at, or the services that districts provide, is they are really focused on critical thinking, creative thinking, being able to problem solve, research, kind of inquiry-based projects, learning, and things like that. Some of them have started to do the K-2 talent development. Like I said, U46 is one that has, because they know that there's also a need to kind of expose students to different scenarios and different skills to really see if we can foster that, so that when it is time for the identification process to happen, we're familiar with some of those things that we're asking to see. You know, are they critical thinkers? Are they creatively thinking? Are they digging deeper? Are they, you know, synthesizing information the right way? So that's part of that K-2 piece.
And I apologize, just a couple more.
Sure.
It's speaking specifically about the magnet school now. And decision to place it in the Conrad Fisher School.
Mhm.
And that would be, my understanding, 3 additional classrooms minimum that would be needed, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct, over the course of the time. So in the year 22-23, we would have a 3rd grade, and then the following year would be a 3rd and 4th, and then the 3rd year would be all 3. So it's a progression.
Thank you. And I know a lot of things can change between now and 2025, as time has proven. But is there, in this current thinking, would that accommodate the current students at Conrad Fisher as well as these, as the magnet school?
So right now, with the dual language program being at Conrad Fisher as well, part of the reason we want to do the magnet is so that those students can have exposure to the magnet program if they were to qualify. I am not certain the numbers and what that space looks like. I personally don't, but I know that we wanted to house it there because we wanted to have accessibility for our students.
So, but what we are, we're building 2 classrooms out there as part of the construction project. We've got 1 monolingual section of kindergarten, and the starting with the class, the people in the monolingual section would have the choice of attending either Emerson or Field. And so instead of needing 6 classrooms, we would need 3. And so we would have enough classrooms at Fisher to house all of our programming.
So I'm sorry,
we kind of transform Fisher into our special school, is that, or for lack of a better term, is that the vision?
To a certain extent, you could say that. Any native English-speaking student or native Spanish-speaking student who lives in the Fisher boundaries and is participating in dual, so the native English-speaking students have priority to get into dual above anybody else outside of the district. So I think that it will still predominantly be comprised of people from the Fisher neighborhood, but every year we have 1 section of kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, moving up the ladder who is not participating in the dual program. And they frequently, I frequently get transfer requests from those families asking to attend a different school because they don't want to be in a monolingual section with the same students every year moving up the ladder. We had hoped that we might be able to come up with some creative solutions, possibly with combination classes or some other things like that. And as we monitor class size, we are trying, we were trying to identify how that was going to work as the current bilingual programming phases out and as the current dual language ratchets up, and what was the interest going to be in dual, and all of those types of things that we were monitoring with the implementation, in addition to the construction of the construction project that would give us more space. So What we think is in terms of housing the REACH program, I think that there, or what the gifted program, whatever that ends up, being called, if it stays REACH, so be it, needed to go somewhere, and it just seemed to make the most sense, primarily for the educational benefits, and also considering the space and programming across the district, for that to be a school that housed the program. And so it would become, in some cases, a school where some of our special programs are housed. We do that with some of our special education programs where we have some special learning populations that don't necessarily attend their home school. We have that with the dual program. We would also then try to have a place to house the magnet program for REACH, and we're suggesting that Fisher is the best option for a variety of different reasons to house that program.
Can you remind me, how many sections of dual language do we have now?
Right now, we'll scale up to third grade next year.
Yes.
So every year we have between 3 and 4 sections of dual. It varies at each different grade level, just depending on the interest from outside the Fisher attendance area, but mostly primarily driven by the number of students that live in that area that attend on any given year that need the dual programming as part of their required services. So this year, I think we have 3 kindergarten sections, 4 first grade sections, and 3 second grade sections. Is that what we have? Or is it 4, 4, and 3?
I'm not sure. 4, 4, and 3, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
4,
next
4,
year, we're slated for 5 sections of kindergarten.
I mean, first of all, that's fantastic, the growth of that program. But, in Focus 205 that Kara led, we heard, loud and clear from our parents that they liked their neighborhood school. And it sounds like we're taking one away. And it sounds like we have enough sections that, maybe we house dual language at more than one school. At any rate, let me just leave it at this. I just ask that, you listen closely and work closely with the Fisher neighborhood to make sure that we're not taking something away from them that they cherish.
Well, I think that's part of what you see with the communication plan for next year, and really focusing on communication as a priority next year. Another thing is that we have initially looked at dual, and we weren't sure how the program was going to grow, and exactly what we were going to. We never liked the idea of having an odd section, but ideally you would want to have 2 strands. But the concentration of native Spanish-speaking students is so primarily in that area that to offer the dual at multiple schools, you can't really do one on the north side and the south side and have a true 2-way dual language immersion program without busing a lot of native Spanish-speaking students all the way across town. And then you end up with needing bilingual specialists in multiple buildings all over the place, which are hard to find, whether that's speech, reading specialists, people like that. So we continue to look at options, and I think that I think that there are different ways that things could evolve over time with our programming. I think that there has been many different opinions that have been registered about our gifted programming over the years, and I think that we have finally landed on a program that both improves the services for the students that are truly gifted in the top 2%, as well as meets the personalization needs of students at all levels. So I think that the recommendation itself is solid. At this point, we definitely do think that Fisher's the right place for it to be. But that obviously doesn't mean you don't examine and analyze and take a look at how things evolve over time. It could be that we change the way dual is housed. It could be that we change at some point where the magnet program is housed. But right now, we think that Fisher is the best option for that.
As Margaret says, 2025 is a long way away. I just want to urge you to be sensitive, because we did hear that so loud and clear as we talked to the community that they cherish their neighborhood schools. I just want to urge you to be sensitive to the community and to the Fisher community. And then, Leslie, I probably should have said this up front, and I don't say it often, but I think you did a really nice job with this.
Oh, it was a team effort, Marianne, Nikki, and all the other people that helped.
Right.
It was a very
Leslie, Marianne, Nikki, the entire team, let me direct this at all of you, including your outside consultants. I mean, it's a very thoughtful analysis.
Thank you.
I urge you to include parents, along the way as this evolves. But I think this is, at least, from what you described tonight, this sounds like, it's a definite upgrade to what our current offering is. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Jim.
That's all right. Those you followed along my thing. You had followed along with that, and I guess I just want to say again, Jim asked some of the questions that I was thinking, so that's really good. Thank you for that.
I'm sorry.
No problem. It's a team. I want to reiterate. I really think this plan is very progressive and very forward thinking, and I appreciate, as Chris outlined, all the communication that has occurred thus far. And I just want to reiterate that it is really, as great as this plan is, we have to make sure we continue to get the community feedback, and particularly the community that's going to be impacted by the implementation of this program, and I'm speaking of the magnet school in particular. So we've got some time to figure out what that looks like, and I guess I'm again stressing, let's get their feedback and be prepared to pivot and respond to the feedback that we get. And I think this will be excellent.
Thank you, Margaret.
And to think I could have just said I agree with Margaret would have saved a lot of.
So I'm going to jump on you did an awesome job bandwagon. I mean, it's such a monumental task that your team, all of you, took on. And it's just, I think I said this to you when we talked 2 months ago, 3 months ago about this program. It made my heart swell just talking about education and our students and what is best for our students, not just one group, but all of our students. And so it just kind of renews my faith in why we are here. It really does. And I also, to build on what Chris asked you about, I think the way you got here should be the standard. And it's another example of using this standard, because I know there's a lot of them, on how you included all the stakeholders along the way in this 2-year process. And, middle school curriculum changes comes to mind, the same thing, stakeholders utilized all along the way. Their voices heard, changes made, tweaked along the way to get to where you're here talking to us right now. So it's just so commendable, and I want to thank you all. I do have much the same concern as Margaret and Jim. I'm worried about that neighborhood school. I am. I'm worried about, who knew that dual language would just, be so successful, which is amazing, but it is a concern. And I know the facilities up, the new construction will help that expanding building. But I don't want the Conrad Fisher families to feel like they have to go somewhere else. That is troubling to me. So I hope that we continue to look at that and look at if other options are available, because it would feel, I feel like now they're almost like the second thought. If they're not in dual language and they're not magnet, then they have to go somewhere else. And I don't want families to ever feel like they don't have a neighborhood school. So I encourage you to keep looking at that. So 2 questions I really had. The timeline in that page 10, RJ, if you could go up 1 slide for me. It talks about the implementation through 5th grade. What happens at the middle schools?
So at the middle schools, actually, RJ, if you want to, I'm going to move him.
Okay.
If you go past the communication, actually keep going towards the end. Nope, other way. Yep. After the communication slide, and then 1 more. So this kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. So most of the pieces of the puzzle we're finding is that at the elementary level is where we really wanted to make sure we were supporting the students, because they didn't have access to a lot of the pieces of the services. So at the middle school level, what will happen is for ELA, they will have the 6th grade enriched, 7th grade enriched, and 8th grade enriched. Dr. Thompson and I, the director of literacy, we're going to start working this summer with actually those reach teachers at the middle school to start to work on the curriculum and kind of look at the task of revisiting it. So that for the 6th, 7th, and 8th enriched, there's no reason why those kids who are currently in the program aren't going to benefit from some of that work that we do over the summer. And so that will just be kind of progressive, just like any other review and revision of curriculum for the middle school, for ELA, if that makes sense, Courtney.
Yep. Yeah, so, and then so they are going to reap the rewards quicker, right? Like they're going to start
True,
seeing.
right? Because it's just an adaptation to adapting curriculum and making sure that it's a little bit more rigorous. It brings in some of those skills that we talked with the department chair over at the high school.
Yep. Okay.
And as we start to develop that, there's no reason to not implement that as soon as we can, because their services aren't changing. It's the curriculum that's changing, and so we can do that in a manner that we hope is effective without causing gaps as well. So we have to be cognizant of that.
And the same at math?
So for math, RJ, if you'll flip the next slide. So for math in 6th, 7th, and 8th, we are, math will be a little bit different though because of the way that the acceleration pathway is. So currently we are on a double accelerated path for math. We are shifting a little bit to a single accelerated pathway. So for example, our 5th graders that are currently in the program, they are going to continue on that double accelerated pathway that we currently have. As we create the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, so when those 3rd graders in 22-23 are identified, they will then, when they get to middle school, as you can see here, they will have Math 1 as a 5th grader, Math 2 is 6th grade, 7th grade pre-algebra, and 8th grade algebra.
So the math portion of it will have to wait for it to naturally cycle in
to
through.
naturally kind of move, so we don't cause any gaps in learning for our students. If you remember when we did our Thrive D205, Mr. Collins was on that. We were listening to families about the stress and the pressure and all of those things with the pathway that we have. So what we want to do is kind of look at what is in the best interest of our students and kind of move to that single accelerated pathway. But then in working with the math department chairs and Adam Rubicek, we'll still provide some of those opportunities for those higher level kids that want to take some of those higher level classes, be it through working with Elmhurst College or working through a way to still provide them the opportunity that they would like with those double accelerated pieces or those other classes like those Calc 2.
So it'll still filter down a little from the high school, like influences from them during that middle school years while you're waiting for.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little bit different than the ELA. The ELA will definitely be quicker,
more seamless,
and more seamless. The math, it might be a little bit different.
Okay, great. And then I know I'm sorry if I stepped out for this, but if you could help me understand a little more about the total school cluster groupings.
Sure.
Like for a non-accelerated kid, right? Like, so that middle of the road kid or that kid that needs special needs. Now, do they get clustered by a, say they're, you know, kind of middle of the road in English, but need help in math? How does that cross kind of subject grouping work, or am I misunderstanding it
No,
completely?
so what happens is there's a couple different ways. And when talking with Dr. Gentry, every district, so Woodridge 68 does this, Moline does total school cluster grouping as well. And in looking at their models, every district kind of does it a little different based on their needs and the size of their buildings, the size of their classes. So what they do is the first piece is kind of taking those higher level students and clustering them together and then putting them in a classroom with a narrower continuum of learners, and then kind of almost grouping our kids flexibly in almost like 5 different levels, so to speak, and then kind of working with those kids in smaller groups and forming classes. So depending on the needs of the students in the class, they'll still receive all the supports, but the teacher will be able to really personalize learning and support them. And what happens is that the following, so it's all data driven. So the following, as they're going through the school year, teachers are collecting data, seeing where kids are falling, how they're achieving, what they're doing, and then for the next year they might change, you know, students are going to ebb and flow. So there's a couple different models. One is that it kind of ebbs and flows by year, or you could also do flexible grouping within the grade level. So you might have a general education classroom with these students, and these students, but then during math, they may switch and the teachers might be able to say, okay, I'm going to have these kids, they have this need, these kids have this need, and personalize the learning a little bit. So it really does just depend on kind of the path that we want to take. And I think we'll learn more about that when we meet with Dr. Gentry in April as to kind of what we feel our needs are for our students.
So the clusters happen within a classroom. So a teacher
So
will
within
have
a grade level,
at grade level. So a teacher would only have a cluster of similar learning.
No, it'll still be a heterogeneous mix,
Okay,
but it won't
that's
be
what I
as, here's like a typical classroom, right? You've got your super high level learners,
Right.
and then you've got some students that need support. And so what it does is it kind of narrows it a little bit. So this teacher might have the higher achieving students and then a heterogeneous mix. And then this teacher will have the next highest group of kids and then another so it kind of, there's still a continuum of learners, but it's not this big.
Extremes.
It's right. So that teachers can really focus their instruction, and it also gives students an opportunity to kind of grow and show leadership, because sometimes when you have some of those kids that are naturally the natural leaders, they're high achieving, those other kids can't grow as much.
Right.
And so this provides them an opportunity to kind of you know, bring in those self-efficacy skills and advocate and participate and show their leadership skills, as well as be more confident in their academics.
Yeah,
So Courtney, two of the things that are taken into account, and so here's what we always do, right? The teachers in the spring sit down and develop class lists, and they develop class lists based on certain types of criteria or what have you. This helps establish some of the criteria for how you are strategically assigning students to different classes. And you're always trying to narrow the band, like Leslie says, so that, say, instead of having 5 levels of students, a teacher only has 3 levels of students they need to differentiate with. And they're always sort of grouped in a way that students can pull each other up and don't get stuck. So there's a methodology to it, so that we learn how to do that, in addition to learn the support mechanisms that you have to put in place with personalizing the learning and the strategies that go along with it and those types of things.
No, and I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because I think as a parent over the years, I've watched, you know, talent development happen naturally by students who are just not quite learning as fast as the next kid. They're those faster learning students are naturally helping their peers develop. So I like the fact that the gap is narrowed, but I like the fact that it's still going to be this combined and variety. So I appreciate it.
And that's partly too the reason we're doing a lot of professional development next year, that we're not moving into it right away, but really building a foundation of teacher knowledge and skills, administration knowledge and skills, so that when we are doing this, and Dr. Gentry and her team is also going to help us kind of say, okay, these are the criteria, this is what we're looking at. So we want to do it methodically and make sure we're doing it well. So that's why we're going to spend next year kind of doing the professional learning
Yeah, and I love that part of your timeline because I think this is something that you need to, it doesn't have to be perfect out of the gate, but you should do it well out of the gate. And with all this planning and implementation, there's just such potential there. I'm really excited for it. So thank you guys for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to say thank you not only to the team of Marianne, Nikki, and you, Leslie, but I know Ariana and Michelle. So, I mean, it's extend. Why I want to highlight that is to recognize, the work that you're doing, but the interdisciplinary work, it just models what needs to happen in the classroom, and you all are doing that. And so it gives me some confidence, right, about the implementation. To many different, I mean, the whole schools are going to change. And so there's a lot that comes with that. And so there, the devil's in the details, but, I think we're in good hands. So, but with that, what I really like is the personalized learning and differentiation and the layers of service and continuity of services. Because from my experience, the students the light bulb can go off at any time. And this approach captures them versus slotting them. So that's what I really like. But I'd like to go, RJ, if you can, to the pyramid slide. And I want to I want to understand my Conrad Fisher School from this continuous services, not only with what you're highlighting here, but with the dual language and the monolingual. So kind of help me understand, like if I'm coming into that school, what would that be for my student? Okay.
So if you are a Conrad Fisher family and you are in the, let's say, the dual language program or the monolingual program at this time, you still have those layers of services. So if a student at Conrad Fisher did not necessarily qualify for the magnet, whether they're in the dual or the monolingual, they would still be provided those services of acceleration in math or enrichment in ELA. So there's still those layers of support and services. And then we also especially want to focus on that talent development in those younger grades in both of those classroom environments, whether it's the dual or the monolingual. We want to make sure that the teachers are providing those opportunities within the school day to progress their skills and identify some of those kids at an earlier age that just might need some more support. Does that make sense, Karen?
So, Dr. Moyer, when you talk about the monolingual, I wanted to understand, you had mentioned something, and I'm not sure that I capture the whole picture, is we have one class monolingual at each grade? You said something about having some of those students have options to go to Emerson and Field. So help me understand that environment for me as a Fisher.
Right now, we have one monolingual class in each grade, K through 2, that corresponds with the year that we implemented dual.
Yeah.
Each year we've had, I received multiple requests, 3 to 5 a year for sure, easy, asking to transfer out to our other schools because the families don't like the idea of having to be in that single strand section for the child's entire
Elementary years, right?
Elementary years, correct. In addition to that, we were trying to monitor the options of, do we have dual language in multiple buildings? Do we create combination classes? Do we ultimately see that some of the enrollment starts to trickle to such small numbers that we would maybe take a look at asking those families to consider attending somewhere else if it were to ever come to that, because the numbers just, there are only 4 kids left that wanted monolingual or something like that. We didn't really know exactly how things were going to evolve, and we wanted to monitor. And we think that the timing of this particular REACH implementation meets multiple needs, starting with a commitment to equity, but also then taking a look at the practical considerations of our programming across the district and just melding that into the implementation of the magnet concept. And so that's I mean, that monolingual section, we really, the numbers are at an awkward size. That combination classes just don't look like they're gonna work. It looks like the 2 extra classrooms, we tried to make Fisher a 4-section school, like Hawthorne, Lincoln, our 2 largest schools, and Edison, our 3 largest schools. And at the enrollment growth that we're having out there naturally combined with dual language, we really don't want to exceed a 4-section school. That's not a good model unless you can get the 6 sections, and those schools start to get really large. And so it was something that was going to have to be addressed as part of future planning somehow. And we just think that this makes sense at a lot of levels, to put this forward as part of the recommendation.
Yeah, I would just suggest that, yeah, we continue to look at how do we still have that neighborhood school and work it out, if at all possible. Okay, so thanks for sharing the middle school, because it was with the impact of this, how does it, again, you're working with a lot of people, which is awesome, unit district, so that it's seamless. I like the longer term planning because it's going to take that long. You know, with the communications, I know that you're doing this, but I just want to highlight the feedback loop. And I know that you and I spoke about, you mentioned the continuous improvement cycle. And I think that that's important for us to talk about, not only with our community, but with our staff, because, I mean, this is all about, you know, just learning something new like our students are, right?
Right.
And, you know, the pieces are, there'll be coming at them. It'll be curriculum. The technology piece, you know, is, you know, hit them hard this year. Differentiation, the school, total school clusters. And so as long, you know, just let's be clear about, I'll call it the scaffolding, because you all have used that word, so it's your lingo, so that people aren't overwhelmed. And so what pieces start, what's the next layer, what's the next? And then integrating all of those pieces, like with our tech committee and, you know, I think that that's important for us to highlight as we provide professional development to our staff, to include those elements and plug them in where they're helpful. The clearer that we can be with that and integrating that deployment to our people, the more seamless the implementation will be, okay? Thanks for sharing what other districts are doing, because I think that's important for our community to know. And what was the last thing? I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, just 3 quick things. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was great. I appreciate all the information. I just wanted to say all of my questions were answered. The K-2 talent development, I love that. I think it just instills like a love of learning early on. And, you know, we've all know kids that have really excelled or been way ahead at those grades, and having more to do just keeps them excited about learning, which is important. And then I love this very positive approach to this system, and providing opportunities along this continuum, I think is great. Sometimes it's like you're in reach or you're out of reach, and I think it can be defeating when you're, you know, working towards that or on the cusp and needing those things but not quite getting there. And this provides services to all of our students, and I just love that. And I think that there's a sense for some of our students or families that they're missing out on something if they're not in there. This takes that piece away, and offers the opportunities for all of the students. And then lastly, I also really like the single acceleration in math at the middle school. Having kids that have gone through that as well, I think this is nice because it allows them to really cement the skills that they need and delve deep into those things that they're going to need moving into the high school classes, and especially the higher level high school classes, so that when they get there, they have a really sound foundation. So I like that too. So those are my 3 quick things. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. That's great. Did a good job. I really like that it's methodical and, you know, process. And it's good.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks. You're free. You're released. Yeah, right. Not yet. Okay, COVID-19 update.
All right, time for the regular update. And we'll let RJ get this pulled up. All right, so we'll get going. We can just keep moving on. The first series of slides is the update on the metrics, which we usually start with. And so if you look at this slide, the one thing I would point out, this is the DuPage County. And you can see in the county that there's been an uptick in positivity rate, case rate approximately the same. Has been some concern locally about the increase in youth cases. You can see that from March 5th to March 12th, we had a rise from 189 to 289. The next slide, we correlate our, well, that's just a visual depiction of some of the trends. So the next slide is our local estimated District 205 7-day trends. And the dashboard, we correlate the Northwestern dashboard with the dates that the health department releases its information so that there's a consistency visually on the website between local numbers and county numbers. However, the Northwestern dashboard ups itself every day. So I will say that as of yesterday, which was March 15th, the numbers were 5.1% positivity rate, which is up from 4% 7 days ago. And the case rate, 7-day average, was 167.8, up from 115.4 7 days ago. So we're seeing some increases over the last couple of weeks. If we go down, and then the next, if you want to refer back to that ever in the presentations, that's a visual depiction of these numbers. Then as we continue to go through our local factors, we had a week-over-week increase of in positive student COVID tests reported to us. We had 6 on March 5th, and then we had 21 the following week. Now, the next slide with the local factors, we are going to continue to update our screening data, but it was not updated for the purpose of this presentation because last week was the first week that we implemented it. So for example, we're starting to track it, we're starting to accumulate the database, we're starting to track the longitudinal trends, but we only really have 1 week's worth of anything to input, so there's not a lot to track for, and trying to get that organized. The high school first tested on Friday, so we're working on that, but that will be part of our report in the future going forward. And then the rest of the local factors, We continue to just report out every week. Not a lot of movement one way or the other on some of these. We do anticipate that with the recommendation, or the recommendation motion tonight related to increased in-person learning. We talked today, our principals are extremely busy as it currently is contact tracing, and we think that we're going to have to hire some more people to support contact tracing as part of the next steps for increasing in-person learning. And RJ, you can go on. That's just, those are just some of the safety measures. Those are just some other informational things. And since the last meeting, a couple of things we've had a couple different things that we can report to you. So the next slide shows some very good news on vaccinations. We currently have 86% of our staff have reported that they've received both doses of the vaccine. So that is very good. And we will continue to track that, continue to try to help secure options for people who, for one reason or another, were not able to get their first round. We had some people who, the majority of the people that have not gotten vaccinated are people who are expectant mothers, have allergies, are hoping to wait for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's maybe a little bit more allergy friendly. Some people that maybe had trouble with their second dose for one reason or another. I think we had that storm in there and it affected a couple people for their second dose. So we're working through a few things, and Kevin is typically the point person on that. It's been helping coordinate things with the county. And we just had good news, correct? We can report that publicly? Why don't you share the latest? I think it's very, very positive.
So we are going to be partnering next week with Jewel Osco to provide vaccinations for the rest of the educators in the county who have not been vaccinated yet. And then with the remaining dosages for anybody else who's eligible in 1A and 1B. So it's about 830 educators across the county who have not yet been vaccinated, and then the remainder of the doses, which is about 350 or so, will go to eligible people in 1A and 1B.
It's been working out well at York. When we've done those larger sites, it's been working out well, and so we'll just continue to do that with local groups as much as we can and help people get vaccinated. So
these additional 350 doses, are they available to the community? Is that the idea?
yes, that would just go through the Jewel sign up. We'd make registration links available. Kevin, right? Something like that.
Right. Yeah. That's. If you noticed my mad typing, that's what I was working on with Jewel right now, actually, is how those additional dosages will be distributed and disseminated there.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that. How will our community know how to schedule an appointment?
So we'll send out information once we know for sure. We have to get it out. We had to guarantee that a certain number of dosages would go to educators across the county first. That was how this was set up. And so once we know how many are left over, then we'll go from there and we will put it out publicly.
So the next slide is the thought exchange window closed yesterday, and we haven't had time to sit down and go through all the data. But Bev is going to share some high-level data as well as some of her plans for next steps about how we hope to use that data for some continued community engagement.
Good evening. As you can see, and as Dr. Moyer pointed out, we closed the thought exchange on yesterday, but it opened on the 5th, closed on the 15th, so it was open for a considerable amount of time. There were 2 exchanges that we did run, one for parents, families, and then another for staff. As you can look at the parent breakdown, parents participating, we had about 1,360 of those parents, of course, registering thoughts. People issue more than one thought, so about 1,750 plus in terms of thoughts actually put into the exchange. And then that starring mechanism. I'm going to read this number: 88,247 stars awarded to thoughts during the process. That is a lot. I did check it out with Thought Exchange, and to verify, there are engagements that go even higher into the millions in terms of being able to star your thoughts. So you can see how engaged our community is. Also, when you go and flip that to the staff, 242 staff members participated, 331 thoughts registered, and in terms of starring, 6,148 thoughts. As a high level, just looking at it, there are about 13 different themes that emerged, particularly during the parent exchange. I would say a similar kind of categorization on the staff side, all different thoughts when you break it down between parents and staff. However, I would say primarily, if you're looking at a theme for parents versus looking at the future, what they wanted was information and change right now. The immediate was on their mind. When it comes to the staff, I would say they were a little more forward thinking or futuristic, looking down toward the start of the next school year, but all had a lot of similarities in terms of they want what's best for students. They certainly want to remain engaged in the process. They want to see communication and more transparent communication in many ways. But if you're looking at parents and their prevailing theme for right now, for those that participated in this exchange, they certainly wanted to see full days. And as we go along and we're able to break down this a little bit more, we can get into the nuances, but that is a little bit of where they were thinking at this particular point in time. In terms of future community engagement, we're going to break this down in the leadership teams and see exactly, again, what those nuances happen to be. But the goal is to take this information and to build focus groups, establish focus groups across our school community, including our students, to make sure that their thoughts, their actual conversations, that we drill down deeper and say, what do you want to see happening inside of your next school year? What are your priorities? It will also be interesting once we actually bring our plan, reveal it to the community, relaunching a thought exchange, and seeing exactly how we built understanding over time. So that's just a little bit, but I'm happy to take any questions about what I initially saw and the results.
When will we get like the full results?
The full results. Give us at least a week with the data, and I'll be able to send that out to you.
Bev, what does the Thought Exchange company send to us? What kind of information do they send to us almost immediately?
You get theming, you can see all of the comments, begin to read through those. You can also see how they were categorized in theming, and certainly we'll have a chance to combine those categories if we certainly like, or change the naming of the categories to better fit the way we talk or we speak here in D205. And you'll also see word clouds. You can see those types of common words that come out. So it's a bit of a dashboard that you can see overall the various comments, the breakdowns by theme, word clouds, and I believe there is one more, tiles. You can have it broken down into categorization of tiles.
Thank you. I'd be curious to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me as well. I'd love to see all the written comments and take the time to read through them. Thank you.
I'm not sure if people recall, it's been a while already, but we post those on the when we get those results, we post them on the website, so they'll be available for people to look and see. All right, so some of the other information then, just some updates that we returned to the hybrid schedule at Bryan and Sandburg yesterday. We returned students to York 4 days a week yesterday. We initiated saliva screening last week in grade 6-12. And we have a community Zoom session Monday, March 18th at 7 p.m. And I would like to allow for Bev and Kevin to explain what the topic of that is going to be.
Well, first, not to step on your flow there, Dr. Moyer, but it's Thursday, the 18th.
Why didn't you catch that before tonight, Bev? Jeez. There is no such thing as Monday, March 18th, at least not this year. All right, thank you. It's Thursday. It's Thursday. It's Thursday. Thursday the 18th. Yes, thank you.
Not a problem. Happy to catch for you anytime. In terms of the quarantine session, it will be very similar in nature to some of the other information sessions that we've done on vaccines, and it will, of course, be in a Zoom format, a webinar format where the community, we will not usually be able to see the community. However, the community can communicate and put their questions in so that the entire panel can see it. And during the time that they're issuing questions, we do have Kevin, who will be on board, and then also very familiar to everyone, I believe, would be Dr. Zachary Rubin, who would be giving some general information about quarantines. And then we will be following up with what our process is and what it looks like inside of D205, what you can expect. And I know for sure that everyone is anxious to talk about travel and what happens on the other side of travel. So we will be talking about what happens before you leave, if you happen to travel, and then what happens when you should be returning. So, Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to add any more to that?
No, that's it.
All right.
So we did in our last communication provide some updated information based on the recent guidance that came out. And obviously we're using that guidance for some of the future planning that we're doing as well. So let's move into the future. That's the next slide. So the motion later in the meeting will be to return students to school for 5 full days of in-person learning per week effective Monday, April 12th, and that is a Monday. And so I just wanted to sort of share with you the various different things that we're planning for and that are entailed in this so that you get some type of an understanding. There will be detailed plans by building. Each building is a little bit different with its enrollment, its percentage of in-person, its physical layout. And so there may be some anomalies by building. These are some of more of the higher level things. We will communicate specifics over the next couple weeks to families as the buildings can pin down some of these exact nuances per site. Some of it will be consistent per grade level. Some of it might vary a little bit by building. So there are some learning implications, and I'm not going to belabor all of these things. Some of these, I don't want to get into edu-speak and all of that kind of stuff, but just to give you an idea of some of the things people are going to be wrestling with. One example is that we never really did have the opportunity to help support our high school teachers when they move to the block schedule. They're now going to have to redesign their lesson plans for fourth quarter to move away from the block back to an 8-period day. And also we're going to have to figure out how to deal with remote learners that are on their screens for a longer period of time, and how to support teachers who are teaching simultaneously throughout the day for a longer day with more preps. So these are all the various different types of things, just not that that's exclusive, but that's just one example of some of the different types of things that people are wrestling with instructionally and otherwise as we move through. So I'll just give you a couple of other things that are part of the consideration. So an example of schedules as well would include at the elementary level, we'll have to add, even though the start and end time of the day would remain, we would go back to our original start and end times like we had prior to this whole disruption. 367-day disruption, I guess, is what it's been. And so the start and end times would reflect what people are used to, but the schedule within the day is going to have to be adjusted to account for a variety of different variables. And at the elementary level, it will be the buildings may have to add more lunches depending on how many spaces they have. So if they have to spread out lunches too far throughout the day, we then have to add an extra recess for snacks so that kids don't go too long without eating, things like that. Principals are working with their building leadership teams and their grade level principal teams and the district office together to work through all of these specific issues that need to be addressed. Couple other examples of some different types of things that we're going to have to address. Staffing is very much going to present challenges, but we have a plan. We're beginning to work through this. Our learning and teaching department is working with HR to help support the buildings to get lunch supervisors hired and identified. And our food service people are working with HR to begin the process of starting to call back people that were laid off. The lunches at the schools will be of a grab-and-go nature. We won't have long service lines or anything like that. We have to take a look at how we schedule the exact time of the different lunches to make sure that our custodial people can properly clean the rooms. We're looking at the possibility, or I should say rather likelihood, that if we need additional custodial support, and we likely will, that we might have to outsource that. We have a need for lab supervisors at the middle school level, permanent subs, contact tracers, I alluded to that earlier. So we're revving up all of those things. There's going to be some additional expenditures associated with this that you need to be aware of, in addition to some possible staffing, or, well, in addition to staffing. And that is that Field is currently using its cafeteria as a COVID room. We have to find some type of a permanent space that Field can use for a COVID room. And she's working with Todd to try to figure out what types of options are available for some type of a temporary space that is solid and durable enough to possibly be set up outside the building for that purpose. We may have to rent tables. We're thinking we probably will. We will likely have to rent a fair number of additional tents above and beyond what we're already renting. So those are the different things that are being planned for, and a lot of those things are by building. Some buildings have more indoor spaces for kids to eat than others, et cetera, so it's not always a one-for-one. We will be expected for the lunches to have 6 feet of social distancing. All students will have to face the same direction when they eat. So that is the ISBE has lifted, in conjunction with the Illinois Department of Public Health, has lifted the capacity limits for the spaces, but the 6 feet and some other guidelines, like all the kids facing the same way, are things that we have to adhere to. We have to plan for inclement weather days. There's a residual impact on how we plan for PE because essentially we're using PE for cafeteria and other large instructional spaces. We are going to have to modify our self-certification processes primarily at the middle school level. We're going to have to come up with something. We're investigating that right now due to the sheer numbers of students that we have to try to get into the buildings in a short period of time. Again, I don't want to go into all of the various different things. I just want to give you a feel for what is happening and what is going to be happening over the next month to get ready for this on the 12th. I talked a little bit, I alluded a little bit about cost implications, but I put that on a separate slide. Our principals are going to kind of be repurposed as full-time contact tracers and lunch supervisors. And I think probably the district office personnel are going to be taking their shifts as lunch supervisors across the district. So I'm sure that we'll learn a lot when that when that happens. We'll remember our roots. They've started on that, and we're just gonna problem solve and do whatever we have to do to make it happen. So we're prepared to be able to fully reopen 5 days a week on April 12th, but there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then, and there will be additional communications that go out with that specific information. Upcoming dates is the next slide. So we were asked to issue a second opportunity for families to redesignate in-person versus remote, and those dates are scheduled for March 22nd and April 5th. And there will be information in the communication on Monday explaining people what they need to do for that, and then catching people up on other things, other of these recent developments that we've been talking about tonight. And planning for next school year continues. The biggest thing that we are wrestling with right now for next year is, we don't know what all of the guidelines are going to be. We don't know if the state's going to require us to plan for remote learning, for example, or what else we're going to be dealing with. But the biggest thing that we are going to have to figure out is if we're providing remote learning options in the fall, how do we come up with a model that does not require our teachers to be teaching simultaneously remote and in person? We have to get away from that. It's extremely taxing on our teachers, and it's not particularly, students that are participating in both options are, in one way or another, their experience could be maximized if we could have dedicated teachers. So that's one of the big things that we'll be working through to make sure we're ready for the fall, as well as, there'll be a lot of other things also that we have to do. We may figure a couple things out from this spring that make it a little bit easier to manage some of our processes. But the remote learning thing is probably the biggest thing that we have to overcome in the fall. And then we're trying not to overcommit to a plan for the fall with too much specificity, except to say that the goal is to build on what we're doing here. I mean, obviously, and refine and improve it, and make sure that our in-person opportunities are of high quality, in person, 5 days a week. But we want to make sure that we consider the parent feedback this spring, and that is a legitimate process in terms of informing exactly what we have in our plan for the fall. So that's the COVID report.
Well, first, just thank you for working on that and all of you that are already starting to work on it. So, the walk back to, this won't even be normal, but the walk back has been a lot slower than, we could have ever guessed a year ago, right? So, all right. Any questions, comments? No? Chris?
Yeah, so, I mean, I support fully reopening the organization, so I'm happy to see the proposal to return to full days, 5 days a week. And I also, they weren't discussed in detail here, but I think there were several common sense changes to quarantine procedures that were very important, all in the direction of, I think, in a safe manner, maximizing the amount of time that our kids are in the buildings. So I was happy to see those revisions as well. And last point was just good to see continued accumulation of weeks going by without additional transmissions occurring in our buildings. And I think that's a very important data point in my thinking on these matters. And obviously tremendous job to everybody on progress in getting our staff fully vaccinated, which we wouldn't be able to be at this point where we're fully reopening the organization if we didn't make that progress. So I just wanted to say thank you again for that. I had a couple of quick questions on related issues. So the first was, I wanted to ask if there were any decisions that are going to be communicated in this forum on the 18th related to travel that the board should be aware of in terms of guidance to families.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to try to clarify, because it seems like there's always ongoing confusion about this issue. I haven't seen the draft presentation, so I think that, I would need Kevin and Bev to speak to some of the planning that they've done with Dr. Rubin. I don't know if I can give you specifics on that, other than to say we want to provide maximum clarification.
Right, excuse me, the draft of the presentation that I have seen follows the guidance from the CDC and IDPH related to travel.
Okay, got it, understood. And this will be in part informing the community and then in part taking their questions, correct?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, understood. Then I just wanted to, with regards to next school year, I think one of the things that Dave said deserves to be kind of pulled out a little bit and highlighted, which was, a commitment to operating our buildings 5 days a week for full days and, continuing to build upon what we're voting on here tonight. And I think that's very important for families to hear that, because I know there's been a lot of anxiety related to next school year. And it's been a very frequent source of questions to me, and I know my colleagues in recent weeks. So I just wanted to make sure that little comment there didn't get overlooked. And that's certainly how I feel. I think that it's now that we have the adults that work for our school district vaccinated, I think it's our responsibility to fully reopen in every possible area where we can do that and restore our services for the kids. So thank you.
So, no surprise to Dave or Kevin, I'm sure. I'm going to go back to travel because I understand that that's what the recommendation of the CDC and the IDPH is, and I understand that that's what the recommendation is going to be. I'm frustrated about the certification questions that I've indicated to you. I'm frustrated about the back and forth on changes of the criteria as recently as our last board meeting when we had this very blunt conversation. And I get things change. I'm not trying to say that what happened a month ago or 6 months ago or a year ago should be the same as today, but I am frustrated that we are placing our families in a situation on that last certification question where it's not about what they do, it's about where they are, which is a complete opposite of the conversation we had last board meeting, back and forth. It was very clear. Dr. Rubenstein said it, we are all here. It's about what you do, what high-risk activities you're involved in, not where you're doing it. And now the certification question basically says if you've traveled, you have to say yes, and therefore you're exempt from in-person learning. I'm frustrated that that has changed so rapidly without a discussion about it, and I'm frustrated that as things are starting to open up more, as things are becoming less strict in our guidelines, we are now becoming more strict. Families made decisions based on what we talked about in this meeting 3 weeks ago. And I'd like to understand why.
So there is an implication here that I am lying
No,
about.
no, Kevin,
Actually, there is.
absolutely, no, there is an implication that something has changed.
Yeah, there's an
We said-
implication that I actually changed something in the COVID app, and I resent that implication because I've changed nothing in the COVID app. And you continue to present that.
No,
and
Kevin, what I'm
you've presented
continuing
that.
to present is that last meeting, we specifically said, it's not where you are, it's what you do.
Yeah.
And you could honestly answer that question and be fine. And now I'm not accusing anybody. I just want it clarified and clear for our community because it's not. And I don't think we should have to wait until Thursday, the 18th. We had this discussion 3 weeks ago right in this room. We can have it here now. I'm confused by it.
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to, and I know you're going to answer, and I'm just trying to break it down so we can kind of understand the question that's being, pardon me? Yes.
So the question on the self-certification app is, have you traveled internationally or to a place with a higher risk for COVID within the last 10 days, taking proper precautions, including washing your hands, watching your distance, and wearing a face covering while traveling? It also says, note that the Illinois Department of Public Health recommends that you quarantine for 14 days if possible when returning from travel. So I think, I'd fill this out for, I think the confusion, at least for me, is, have you traveled internationally? Okay, no. Or to a place with a higher risk, yes or no. But then within taking the proper precautions, I could actually say two different, yes, I've taken the precautions. No, I haven't traveled. Is that where the confusion is?
Well, I think the confusion is if, and this is exactly what I said, and I actually went back and listened to it. If a family owns a home in a state that happens to have a higher COVID risk, but is in their family home with enjoying spring break with no risky behaviors, based on that question, they're going to be out of in-person learning.
Well,
they would have to say, yes, I traveled to a state with a higher risk of COVID.
So that's not how I interpret
But it
that.
doesn't say that you have to quarantine.
Well, no, but when you hit yes, what the certification says is do not go to school today.
Right, but, and I guess
that's what I want clarified. That's what I'm trying to get figured out for everyone.
Right, and that's perfect, thank you. Because I think that sentence that you read was a complex sentence, so there was a couple of pieces in there. Will you read it one more time, that second part?
Yep. So I'll just read the whole thing so we have the context. Have you traveled internationally or to a place with a higher risk for COVID within the last 10 days? This is all the same question. Taking proper precautions, including washing your hands, watching your distance, and wearing a face covering while traveling.
Yeah, so that last piece there should be reworded, right? And I think what we're trying to convey, at least how I interpret that, is have you traveled internationally or have you traveled somewhere and have not taken proper precautions? And so if you do travel somewhere and you do take the precautions that are outlined, then you would be able to continue to go to school. If you, I think we should reword that, make that clear. I don't
think
wanna
it's
speak
just
for
a
everyone, but
clarity.
that's what
I think
I
it's a
would
clarity
like
issue.
to see.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of the business of being too restrictive with folks and back to, I mean, there is an element of freedom and self-control with these things that I think needs to be restored. So I think just rewording it would be helpful.
I just don't want people who are not engaging in high-risk behaviors, whether it's in Elmhurst for spring break because they opted to stay here, or at wherever they go, to not be able to have school come April 4th. I mean, that I don't think that that's the intent here, but that's certainly the way the question leads you down, to answer it honestly, because and I said it last time, it's the responsibility of our families to answer these questions honestly. But it's also the responsibility of us to be able to ask a clear question so they can and still be afforded the right to attend in-person school.
All right, so basically, it just needs, sorry. So just really, it's rewording the question so it's more clear. The intent is still really the same, because you want to know if someone's traveled internationally or to a place that is high risk, or whatever the word is, high risk.
Well,
No.
hold on one
Hold
second
on,
there.
no.
Time out. We want to know if they have traveled internationally, or if they have traveled somewhere and while doing so,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
taken the precautions
Exactly.
outlined.
There you go.
Those are the two
Exactly.
You're
things we're trying to identify. If you travel to a higher risk place, but you are taking proper precautions, then you don't fall under those restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly where we all landed when we left here last month. Gosh, it seems, but it was what you did, not where you were. And I think that is a completely reasonable ask of our community, and they should be honest about what they do. But where they are, the way that question is worded right now, or forever, is leading to not in-person learning, and that's what I'm worried about and not happy with. So if we can fix that question, then I think it will clear up a lot for our families.
RJ, the plan was to, I believe, you're working with the app provider to update the app, and that is anticipated to go into effect after spring break. Am I correct about that? So then clarification to this question is something that we can, yeah.
And
make
then
clear on
just
the
to,
18th,
oh,
right?
sorry.
And make clear on the 18th as well. So I mean, ideally, we'd update in the app ASAP, so people aren't confused as they're getting ready to travel for spring break if they're choosing to do that. And
Yeah,
then obviously,
I-
when we have an audience on the 18th, we should make it
right.
We
very
could
clear.
clarify on the 18th, but the timeline for updating the app is probably trickier than that. I mean, I don't know what's all involved, but I know that there are some steps that need to happen for that. So
And
I
then,
can't speak to it, but
since we're looking at the app, then the latest Illinois Department of Health recommends quarantining for 14 days. It says if possible, is that still the latest?
Those are all of the rest of the app is being updated as well.
Okay.
To reflect other pieces of guidance. There's going to be a two-part question to reflect people who have been vaccinated or had COVID in the last 90 days. That will be one set of questions. And if you have not been vaccinated or had COVID in the last 90 days, that will be another set of questions.
Okay. Because just to clarify something that, I think other people have the same question. CDC gives guidance. Illinois Department of Health is what we are required to adhere to. Thank you. And so
DuPage County makes additional guidance available to us, which we're required to
So like when people send us things about, another state and, different things, while those things are valid and happening and true things, we are under the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Illinois State Board of Education.
That is correct. Those are our regulatory agencies. And the CDC, which provides guidance, when IDPH reflects that guidance in its regulations, it has deferred decision-making to the local county jurisdictions. So ultimately, what has happened when people say, well, you know, this school district did this or this whatever, that could be in Kane County, that could be in Lake County, and they could be getting different guidance from their local health department, which is what the state says. And so, you know, when we get guidance from DuPage County, that is what we're expected to follow.
Okay. So I just wanted to, I don't know, clear that up, because I feel like we get a lot of, you know, there's a lot of confusion, and I don't know, I was confused at one point too. So, all right.
And Kara, for just to build on what you're saying, for quarantines, there are some guidance that is a recommendation that we can maybe tweak or can be altered. For quarantines coming out of the DuPage Health Department, we don't have that.
Correct.
Right. We don't have that flexibility. We have to follow the quarantine guidance coming out of the DuPage County Health Department.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. I just wanted to make that clear as well, because you know, different areas have different things and different counties have different guidelines, and that can be confusing for people as well. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And while we're on it, the mask mandate is from the state of Illinois. Well, you know, those are things that, you know, are, yeah. Karen?
So Kevin, you had articulated additional self-certification questions or modification. Is that going to be communicated on the 18th, Thursday?
No, we will be communicating that with families prior to spring break.
I think we're looking at the next communication for Monday, the 22nd. So I think that we'll do a follow-up from this meeting, we'll do a follow-up from the quarantine session, and we'll do, you know, we'll allude to the app, the redesignation for elementary, any of that stuff that we'll shoot for Monday for that communication.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Did that, oh, Beth, go ahead.
I just had a couple things. I'm just really excited to see more of our kids coming back into the building. So thank you to everybody who is doing tons of work to make that happen. We know how important it is. So could you just reiterate the lunch in the eating area environments and what that guidance is for people who might have some concerns about eating in the buildings?
They have lifted the restriction on group size for lunch.
Yeah.
For lunch. Have to be 6 feet apart, have to be facing the same direction.
Okay. Thank you. And then it's my understanding with the tents you were talking about and such that there will probably be some outside areas used for eating and snack and those things as well.
Some may be using those for PE students to congregate during inclement weather. Some people might be using them for lunch or snack breaks. Some people may be using them just to split classes in half and have some classes, you know, go outside.
While others,
you know, just for extra spaces, for learning, or other things like that. I mean, they're going to get creative and use whatever space they have. But they are going to, we are going to, as soon as the ground allows and you know, we get a little break here in the weather, the tents we have will go back up. We will almost certainly be ordering more.
Okay, thank you. And then I just really like that we are taking community feedback and input in about our plans for next year. I think there are things this year that were helpful for parents and that we're successful. I think there was some good feedback on how parent-teacher conferences went and some other things like that. So I think that we should continue to meet with parents and get that feedback, and from students as well, about things that helped them this year that we might be able to incorporate into next year. Not COVID-based things, but some of the things that we just happened upon going through all of this that we actually were like, hey, that was kind of nice. So I appreciate you guys doing all that work to get feedback from the community. I really like the thought exchange surveys. So thank you. That's all for me.
Just two quick things. When you're talking about lunchroom supervision, I'm assuming you've already thought to appeal to our PTAs who have always historically been very generous with their time and talent, and maybe hiring some people from the PTA to come in as lunchroom supervisors. And then the other thing I'd like to talk about at the appropriate time. We have 5 emergency days built into our calendar that I think in April, we figure out what the end of school date is. But I mean, frankly, I can't think of any bigger emergency in education than this past year has been. And I think we should talk about using those days.
Well, that's something that's legally prescribed by law, and we haven't used any emergency days. When we have, I think, one instance this year, we have the flexibility under the governor's order to declare that a remote learning day. So we didn't call it an emergency day to add it to the end of the calendar. We just were remote that day. So we're really not in a position where we can just add days to the calendar.
So we've been on a 5-hour school day for, all year, and we can't apply any of those hours toward those 5 days? That the difference between a 5-hour day and a normal school day?
All of our days legally counted as days of attendance. So the state board had minute expectations, and we met all of those. So those counted as regular days of attendance for our students. And so we would not be in a position to declare those days that we hold at the end of the calendar as emergency days.
So yeah, and I guess, and I hear what you're saying, Dave, and I guess I think, don't know I hear your response that we could declare them as emergency days, and I guess I think the thought was in April when we get there, is there anything else that is possible? I think that's what the question is, and just to ask to look at if there's anything else possible. I think that's the question. If it's not emergency days, is there another option to explore that? And then we could talk more in April.
Yeah, whenever it's appropriate. I mean, I can't think of a year when, more than this one, when we need to extend the school year to, save as many instructional hours as possible.
Well, and is it possible there's something in the declaration, the disaster declaration, that gives us that authority from the state? I don't know it well enough to know that answer, but maybe there is.
I don't believe so. I mean, we can research that, but I don't believe that exists.
Yeah.
We usually talk about the calendar in April, so could you explore some options and come back to us in April? I mean, we'll have to talk about it anyway.
Yeah, I just want to bring this up well before April, so it wasn't a last minute that it could get some research.
Okay, I'll get you a response to let you know some of the things that need to be considered if you're actually thinking about adding extra days, there are some things you're gonna have to realize are a part of that, and I'll try to provide that information.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So, is that good? Can we start going through the business? All right. Okay, so approval of meeting minutes. Approval of regular board meeting minutes, February 23rd, 2021, and February 24th, 2021. Did anyone have any changes to those? Okay, those stand as presented. Item B, approval of closed session minutes, February 23, 2021, and February 24th of 2021. Those stand as presented. Superintendent's consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they want to pull? Okay, could I have a motion, please, for the consent agenda?
Sure. I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as follows. A, personnel report. B, financial reports. C, membership renewal in the Illinois High School Association.
I'll second.
All right, Jenna, go ahead and call the vote.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, next up is superintendent's agenda action items. Approval of resolution authorizing notice of dismissal to non-tenured teachers other than final year probationary teachers.
So every year you have to count back per the school code, X number of days from the end of the year, and you have to time your staffing decisions based on some legal expectations. And the March board meeting is when that typically falls. And so the first three motions on here all relate to annual standard staffing votes that you make. And I will let Luke explain each one of these as we come to them. So Luke, can you touch about the first one and then they can make a motion, please?
So the first resolution is just the annual resolution for dismiss staff members at the end of the school year. So these are staff members that will be dismissed at the end of this current school year.
Yes, they are non-tenured.
Thank you. That's
Yes.
Could I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing notice of dismissal to non-tenured teachers other than final year probationary teachers.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Margaret, second by Beth. Any questions, comments? Okay, Jenna, you can call the vote.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Hassler?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, the motion passes. Item B, approval of resolution authorizing the honorable dismissal of teachers.
So Luke, if you want to explain a couple
Sure.
of the distinctions between each of these so that people understand the differences, please.
Yes, in an honorable dismissal, these are dismissals for reductions in particular kinds of service or part-time teachers or temporary positions where other staff will be returning. And also in some instances, based on a reduction in FTE, we go through the SB 7 process, and some staff, they are, in essence, it's called bumping. There's bumping rights for individuals that are tenured that need to be moved to other positions because of the reductions. So that's what the honorable dismissal report covers.
Motion, please.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the honorable dismissal of teachers.
I second.
Okay, motion by Beth, second by Margaret. Any comments, discussion?
My only question here is this plan also include any contingencies for a decrease in enrollment that we may experience, or that we, first of all, that we have experienced this year, and any further decrease in enrollment that we may experience next year?
Yes, so some of these decisions, the reduction of FTE was based on some decrease in enrollment.
Okay, thank you.
And just, I had one other question.
Yeah,
So this is a specific number of FTEs. This is not a broad authorization for a number of FTEs to be determined later. This is a specific number of individuals
Correct.
in both cases.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you may call the vote.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, the next item is the increase in in-person learning, which we discussed in the COVID update, and reflects, in December, the board discussed that we would stay open and expand experiences for students as we move forward. So I think we've already discussed, so if we have a motion, and then if anybody has anything else to say, we do that.
I move that the superintendent modify the D205 reopening plan approved by the board and the open D205 resolution adopted last summer to expand in-person instruction to 5 full days a week for all grade levels and expand in-person activities at all grade levels beginning April 12, 2021 for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year in a manner consistent with the March 2021 revised public health guidance from the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health, and also consistent with the March 11, 2021 frequently asked questions published by the Illinois State Board of Education, and to identify the additional supports needed to accomplish this expectation.
I second.
Okay, motion by Courtney, second by Chris. Comments, questions that we didn't already cover?
Within that long motion, that is a motion, just to clarify, to 5 days a week, a full school day, each day at every level.
Starting April 12th.
Thank you.
And a full school day is defined as until 3 p.m.
Well, it depends on the
or
level. Depends on
whatever
the
it
level.
was before COVID. It just because that motion was so
Long.
meticulously worded. I just want to make sure.
Well, I
that
mean, a
we're
school
clear.
day, the hours are different at every building, at every level.
Which Courtney didn't write the motion, so
I,
just.
off the top of my head.
But I just want to be clear that we're voting on full restoration of school days, 5 days a week, all of our buildings.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And that it's a given, but I just want to state that we're always going to be looking at the metrics and the factors, and if there's any need to adjust anything, then we would, of course, communicate that to our community and do that as needed. Hopefully that will not be the case, but just so that people know that.
Okay, all right. You may call the vote.
Mrs. Troutman,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler,
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Dr. Harrell,
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio.
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Item D, approval of O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission intergovernmental agreement. I will just give a brief, I sit on this, I'm the representative. This is something we were asked to participate in from the city a few years ago. So this is just a renewal of that agreement to have someone from the school district sit on that committee. So that's really the background. So it's kind of a formality, but the agreement's in there. So if I can have a motion, then I guess if you have any questions. Did you want to say anything about that? Yeah, that was good.
I move that the Board of Education approve the intergovernmental agreement relating to the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission for the period beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2025, substantially in the form presented by the superintendent, and to authorize the president and/or secretary to sign the agreement on behalf of the board.
I second.
Carrie?
Can I ask you a question? I mean, it was supposed to be making sure that we don't have more planes coming through and all, so how are they, because all the communities want the same thing, but they want to add routes, so just a quick update, or in a future meeting, can you?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But there's a whole lot of paper that, yeah, but yes, you are exactly right. So it's just really advocating for our community. You know, so.
And somewhere embedded in that motion is that Carol will continue to represent us. Did I hear that?
Hi, you're hilarious. I think actually I wrote that. I was going to pass it off.
No.
To the person who asked the question.
My name is nowhere near there.
Friday mornings, 8 o'clock.
Busy, sorry.
All right. And that's, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Troutman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hostler?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right, superintendent's communication.
All right, the first thing that I want to say before I turn it over to Nikki is that I just want to clarify something about that was in my last communication related to Election Day on April 6th. State law requires school districts to be polling sites if they are approached by the Election Commission. And so I do not have the ability to decline. Now, we did work with the Election Commission and we actually got them out of one of our buildings. So we had four buildings originally on the list that they wanted to use this year for election sites. Typically, we have been able to hold at one, which is Edison. They can't seem to find any other location to go besides Edison. Some of this has to do with COVID and some other things related to their ability to secure sites. But I just want to be clear that if they approach us and they can't find another site, we are required to hold it. It's not within our discretion to tell them no. So, so with that, always get to be the bearer of good news. I'm going to turn this over to Nikki to describe our summer school plans.
Thank you, Dr. Moyer. This actually is really good news, but due to the fact that it's almost 11 o'clock at night, I will just summarize the contents of the memo that I wrote to the Board of Education for the community that's listening. So, we knew that due to COVID over the last year and a half that we have some students who might be struggling, as we always do. And so we wanted to, based off the community feedback and the Board of Education's feedback, we wanted to offer a more robust program for our students this year, but we didn't want to overcommit. So about 4 to 6 weeks ago, we sent a survey to our teachers across the district to kind of see who would be interested in teaching this summer, and we had an overwhelming response that got us very excited. So we decided to offer 4 sections at each grade level, which is almost more than quadruple what we typically offer. Usually we can service about 100 students. This will capture about 600 students. And we are going to partner with the ROE and the Park District in this endeavor. So the Park District is going to help us with some enrichment opportunities, because originally we would have really liked to have used our own teachers to provide enrichment and acceleration, but simply due to the fact that we have so many students that we want to capture for our acceleration program, we are leveraging our intergovernmental agreement with the Park District to make sure that we're giving them every large space possible indoors so that they can offer more enrichment opportunities over the summer for EC through 8th grade students. And then we're partnering with the Regional Office of Education to help us work with some consultants to identify what those core standards will be that we all want to focus on around the county, and then develop some lessons for our teachers so that really all the teachers have to do is implement those lessons. So as of right now, we need about 36 teachers. We've had the survey or the openings open for 4 days, and we have 30 teachers who have already offered to teach this summer, so we're excited about that. And then I'm working on a communication that will go to families tomorrow or in the next few days based off the feedback that we received from the Board of Education today. And then Courtney sent me an email earlier today, so I'll just kind of touch on a question that she asked, which is about funding. So typically we capture our students who qualify for Title I services in our summer school program. This year, because we're offering it for everyone in the district, it's by invite only, and it's for our most impacted students. But it will be funded through an offset of our Title I funding and then our CARES Act funding. So we're really hoping that we won't have to dig into any of the other funds that we haven't accounted for. I think we'll be pretty close on having it be no cost to the district outside of that. So with that, if you have any questions for me.
So Nikki, you said the teachers at all the levels were asked about students to target for this program. And so they will be communicated to, and then they have the option of participating or not? Is that?
That's partly true. So sorry if I didn't communicate properly. The survey went to teachers to indicate whether they were interested in teaching. I've been working with Mary Ann in the Learning and Teaching Department to pull the data, and then we're going to share that data with principals to have them fine tune it and identify the students for the program. And then we're looking at the first week of April to be sending the letters to parents to invite their students. And if they say no, then obviously we'll capture more students. So we'll get as many students this summer as we possibly can.
So you'll have kind of a tiered approach. You're going to target students. Hopefully they say yes. If not, there's other tiers then, and you work through that process based on the data. Thanks, Marianne. And then I guess what I'm wondering about is, based on this year, do you think more parents or students would be interested in summer school? To Jim's point about it's fascinating that the state is just using it typical emergency days because of snow versus instructional time for the students to make up for that gap that they're talking about, but not looking at solutions for us.
I do, and also I think parents are looking for, obviously 3 weeks ago we didn't know we were bringing everybody back, but something that we were looking for through our work was getting kids back. Social emotional education and work will be the first 20 minutes of every day just to get students acclimated to being back in the classroom. Obviously now that won't be as necessary, but our lowest performing students oftentimes struggle with things like that. So to answer your question, I do think that we're going to have more community interest in this, and that's basically why we're doing this, is because all year long we've heard and we've had multiple questions, not only from you, the Board of Education, but community members in emails to principals, to Learning and Teaching, and to myself. What are we going to do for kids over the summer? How can we support our kids over the summer? So this is an effort and a partnership with multiple different people, the ROE and the Park District, in order to try to meet the needs of our students who need this.
The other question was, in the past, it's usually targeted, or the facility where the students go is Fisher and Churchville. I thought that that's what it was, but I think you were saying something different when you said we're working with the Park District to get more space. So it might be located physically at other facilities as well this year, right?
So it'll be at Madison, Fisher, Churchville, and then York will also have a summer program, but we're providing as many of our large indoor spaces to the Park District as we can for them to utilize for their whatever they do in large spaces, I can't think off the top of my head, so that then they have spaces at the park district that are opened up for them to be able to have more enrichment opportunities for students. So they won't be offering the enrichment opportunities in our buildings. They'll be using their buildings to offer more enrichment opportunities, but then offsetting that space with our larger spaces to be able to capture more kids for like all-day sports programs and things like that.
So typically, they've used Churchville for some programs. What we're basically trying to do is partner with them to provide as many spaces as possible so that they can take as many kids as possible, possibly work with some of their partners like the museum and other places like that, where they can maybe even expand their programming if there's interest, and so they'll basically be handling the enrichment pieces of it, and we'll dedicate our teachers to the
acceleration,
more of the core academic types of things, or if there are intervention types of things, that kind of stuff.
Chris?
You'd mentioned that the program was likely to be no incremental cost to the district. Is it also no cost for families?
Correct.
Okay.
It's by invitation, and it will be the cost will all be offset by our CARES Act funds and our title funds.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah, I think expanded summer school program that is of no cost to these folks is a great use of that funding. So thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for working with the Park District to, offer things for kids who may not, they just need to be with other kids and enrichment. So, and I'm really happy to hear there's so many teachers that want to teach summer school, because it's not been an easy year. So that's actually really
It says
great.
a lot about their dedication. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you for working on that. Margaret, did you have something, or? Sorry, you were moving your hand. All right. Okay, thanks, Nikki.
Sure.
Okay, one related to a grievance injunction and hearing that was granted, one related to the American Studies curriculum granted, one related to the number of teacher sick days granted, one related to the District 205, I don't even know how to, there's no dash in there. District 205 E-rate program granted, student information, not in possession of records, staff retiring this year granted, quarantine information granted.
Good evening to everyone. Again, this is a great, I was getting ready to say inoculation, no pun intended, as we're getting ready to leave, an inoculation of positive as we're headed out of this particular meeting. If you reflect back to last week when we had spring, it was wonderful. If you drove down the streets in our neighborhoods, you could see people outside, families moving, doing, and the same is reflected. And this is an example from Ben Hartman over at Hawthorne, right over the fence where you see the outdoor classroom and our kids outside engaging in one of my favorite activities that I hope to get to do a lot this spring and summer, and that's just read. So, and they're spread out, they're enjoying themselves and comfortable, and it's just great to see. So Ben is saying finished our week with hashtag literature circles at Hawthorne D205 Outdoor Classroom Ignite D205. And that is your tweet of the week.
Thanks so much, Bev. All right, board communications. Karen, you have a certificate here in recognition of your work on the IASB Executive Committee for 2019-2021. So congratulations. All right. Anything else?
I do have one other thing, given that it's not quite 11 o'clock yet. So,
got 12 minutes.
I'll make it in less. But recall in the original referendum timeline, we were due to issue $50 million worth of debt right about now. And we had that discussion last fall, and we pulled that debt, 40 million of that debt issuance forward to last November. And, Chris asked me to check interest rates, so I give him kudos for pointing this out. That my back of the envelope calculation, by issuing that $40 million last November versus issuing it today, we saved our taxpayers, just on that $40 million issue, $5.84 million in interest payments over the 20-year life of that bond. So I just wanted to say, board, we did a good job together.
All right, that's good.
Thank you.
Ooh, that was only a minute.
You want,
No,
me,
you
to,
got nothing
you want me to
else.
fill
No,
the other 11?
Nope.
I thought that was a challenge.
All right, upcoming meetings, March 18th, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting here at 6 o'clock. March 20th, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting here, actually, I gotta go back. March 18th, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting is here at 5:30 p.m. March 20, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting is here at 8 a.m. March 23rd, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting here at 5:30 p.m. March 24th, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting here at 5:30 p.m. And March 25th, 2021, Special Board of Education meeting here at 5:30 p.m. I was wondering if we were going to see each other at all in the next few days. All right, that is it. It is 10:50. We are adjourned. Have a good night.